The story begins on a dark, rainy night in a gloomy forest. A group of heavily armed knights was pushing through the trees. They found their target, and the leader asked if the vampire had enjoyed his time hiding for half a year. He then yelled at the protagonist, calling him a filthy beast for killing so much time, and said the trick of escaping the holy knights was over even when it was quite clever. The knight lifted his sword and told the hero to know that from this point on, even God will not forgive him. So he should be proud that he was getting killed by the hands of the vampire slayer. As he was deceiving the church and refusing the judgment of the holy knights, and his corrupted form proves all his sins, we see that the boy was in a lot of agony. But the knight then prepared to share a secret. The knight admitted he never truly wanted to catch the vampire earlier and had purposely let him run. He explained that he joined the hunt late and allowed the running to continue because the vampire was a rare prize, and the knight wanted to capture him to make a name for himself and to take it slow and look stylish. Knowing that there is nowhere to run, the boy took out his claws, thinking that the world is ultimately the survival of the fittest. Since power determined everything, he had always been forced to run. He tried to fight and escape, but the effort failed, and the knight hit him directly, slashing him in two halves with one single blow. And the man wondered if what he did was all useless. As he died, he recalled being constantly hunted and cornered. The knight continued to shout that the vampire's existence was an insult to the church. In his final moments, our boy wished for one last chance to change everything. He cried out in pain as his life ended. But as the scene shifts, we see that suddenly our boy woke up with a gasp in a different place. He looked around, sweating, and wondered what had happened. He looked down and saw his arms and neck were fine when he should have died, wondering if what he saw was a dream. But then he realized he was in the same tent he had used before the knights started hunting him. Seeing old marks on the wooden posts, he figured out he had gone back 6 months into the past just before the hunting squad started chasing him. Our boy finally understood he had traveled back in time. He clenched his fist tightly, knowing he had been given a new life. He explained that he used to live in a secluded village in the forest, away from people. Back then, he was a weak vampire named Eugene, surviving by hiding. One day, he acted on his blood instincts, which brought mercenaries and knights after him. And only 5 days later, the holy knights were patrolling the entire village. And time passes by as even after they found the vampire, no matter what, and because he was terrified of being caught, he spent 12 years drinking only the blood of wild animals. Now that he was back in the past, he decided he would not make the same mistake. Eugene decided he would become strong enough so that no one could ever defeat him with the magic of a true vampire. He went to a swamp and decided to change his strategy. Vampires get power from blood, and stronger blood gives more power. With this in mind, he waited for a powerful target. The master of the forest, a giant, scary creature, suddenly leaped at him. Even with the monster in front of him, Eugene showed no fear and prepared to fight. The beast attacked with sharp spikes, and Eugene was thrown backward. He knew his body was weak and all he could do is dodge. Otherwise, he would be finished, but he only needed a small cut. If he could draw blood, he could drink it and finally start gaining strength. Because until now, his method of survival was minimizing his presence. But knowing that it fails, there is no reason to hesitate, and now, more than anyone, he desperately needed to be stronger. Eugene leaped toward the monster as he attacked with his sword, but was shocked that the blade did not even pierce the creature's tough hide. The monster struck back with a tail whip that broke his sword and sent him flying. The creature then slammed its tail down, launching our boy into the air. Eugene hit the ground, badly hurt, and realized he had underestimated his opponent. The creature, a roamer, was a monster from magical realms that sometimes carries a valuable magic stone, opened its mouth to eat him. Eugene knew the stone was the source of the beast's power, but the size difference was too great. He realized he had taken this second chance too lightly because the monster was so strong it could kill him before he could do any damage. The creature attacked with all its power, creating a huge energy wave in the swamp, diving along with our boy as it started eating him. But Eugene decided he could not make the same mistake as before. He had always survived by hiding and holding his breath. But this time, he chose to fight with all his strength just to keep living. He grabbed the monster's mouth with his bare hands. His body began to glow. He knew if he did not win, there would be no more chances. He shoved his hand into the creature's mouth to rip the flesh out and get the blood. knowing that survival depended on the blood of others. And with the final effort, he started absorbing the blood of the monster, getting powerful and defeating it at the same time. Finally, he got inside the body of the monster and took the mana stone, destroying it as it shattered into multiple pieces, and a huge explosion took place in the entire swamp. And as the body of the monster started flying all over the place while the swamp turned red, Eugene remembered his promise to fight instead of running away like he did in his past life. Standing in the swamp's red water was Eugene, who was completely transformed with a new look. He declared that he would conquer both blood and victory. A moment later, Eugene stood alone under the moonlight. He knew that he only wanted the blood from a being like the Forest Lord. But to think that he even absorbed the magic stone was something else, and the mana from the crushed stone was much stronger than he had imagined. He had gained a new ability to cover his skin in black scales that might help him to block the sunlight so that he can move during the day too. Eugene explained that he first learned about the Forest Lord when mercenaries had captured him in his past life. At that time, the swamp was not big, so no one knew about the Forest Lord's existence. But when the territory expanded due to the rainy season and floods, the monster attacked the mercenaries and revealed itself. Back then, they had drunk the creature's blood to escape and defeat a few mercenaries. And from then on, he knew that he will have to drink more of the Forest Lord's blood to gain its full power, but even with this new power, he knew he was still not strong enough to fight the Holy Knight Dearth, who would soon hunt him. And he knew that he should refrain from fights that he cannot win until he is certain. The Holy Knight always finds him whenever. He wants when he sets his mind into it, and his ability to find monsters or undead seems exceptional. So instead of living in hiding anymore, Eugene knew that he must build enough power to oppose the Holy Knights who will come. Seeing the sun was about to rise, he decided to head back before dawn. However, a mysterious voice stopped him, thanking him for defeating the false master. And even when it was all dramatic and the monster seemed like a giant one, it was revealed that this fairy-like creature was a small, blue creature that emerged from the swamp waters and thanked him. The creature then said that invading its home and shedding blood there was wrong. It introduced itself as the Great Mirian, the protector of that area, and threatened Eugene with a curse. She wondered if the boy could even hear her calling him a bald vampire, because sensing the presence of spirits is for some special people. But the fairy was shocked when Eugene asked what she was. As the creature was shocked, Eugene repeated the question. The little creature asked if he heard everything, and he confirmed that he did. She introduced herself again as Mirian, a water spirit who had been enslaved for 15 years. She explained that thanks to him, the place could finally be purified and become a lake again, and for that, she thanked our boy again and again, calling him Lord. Continuously blabbering about how she saw a bald old man getting eaten by the crocodile. But the moment when she thought that the old man died, a handsome man appeared instead with an explosion. But while Miriam was talking, Eugene noticed one of the 10 tattoos on his body was fading. And even the fairy wondered about why the tattoo was disappearing and what it was. And if it was a symbol of a warrior or names of people that the vampire had killed, but the boy told her he did not know what the mark was, and that it had always been there. Since he had no memory of his past, he had focused only on surviving quietly, knowing that these 10 tattoos were engraved in his body from the start. He wondered if the marks were some kind of seal and if one had just been broken. But the boy did not care much, telling the spirit that he will be going now and she should just guard the forest well. But Marion started to panic because it had been a long time since she had talked to anyone, and she complained that purifying the swamp would take a while. She offered to serve him fresh water as thanks. The water she produced did not look clean or appealing as she took it out while puking, which can disgust to anyone, including you guys. So despite her urging, Eugene told her to go away and ignored the offer because the fairy was ready to pee immediately to make the water in large quantities. A few days later, Eugene arrived at a village called Broadwin. A young man suddenly ran in, shouting that the red-eyed monster had arrived. The village chief and other villagers came out and were shocked to see a huge pile of freshly hunted animals on the ground. A young man asked what the monster was planning, as it was not a full moon, and the monster only did that in every half-month. We come to know that the monster was Eugene, who had lived near the village for over 10 years. Eugene stepped out of the forest and asked if he could enter the village. At first, everyone feared his red eyes, but because he always brought food, their strange relationship had lasted for a decade. Eugene explained that he had lived far away because he was sick, but now he was better. Since the village had helped him so much, he wanted to repay their kindness. The villagers were confused. He told them to call him if anything happened. He then removed his mask and revealed his face with a smile. The crowd was frozen in shock at how handsome he was. They wondered if he was a half-elf or a noble. Even the chief was surprised by his appearance. Back in the forest, Miriam asked why he gave all the hunted animals to the villagers. She did not understand because fairies believe vampires only care about blood and death. Miriam complained that he did not need humans since he was leaving soon anyway. Eugene replied that sometimes he needed to care because if he did not intervene, mercenaries would invade and kill everyone in the village. He explained that the mercenaries were coming to take a specific boy from the village and would kill all witnesses and villagers. Miriam was confused and asked if he was telling the truth and how he knew this. She complained that she still could not read his thoughts even after spending days together. She then asked what trust had to do with the mercenaries. Suddenly, Eugene stopped walking and Miriam bumped into his shoulder. She complained, then looked ahead and saw what was happening. A group of heavily armed mercenaries appeared on the forest road. They saw Eugene standing alone and assumed he was just a villager. The leader commented that the man looked weak and unarmed and ordered his men to quietly kill him. One mercenary charged forward with an axe to attack Eugene. Miriam screamed, afraid of what would happen. The man swung his axe, but Eugene was much faster. With a cold look and his eyes glowing red, he prepared to fight back. Instantly, he cut the mercenary in two easily. While the rest of the group was in shock, Eugene explained his tactic to Miriam. They needed to build trust so they would not look suspicious. With a smile, he confirmed he was going to kill all the mercenaries right then and there. The mercenaries screamed in fear as they realized Eugene was a vampire. One of them briefly found courage and shouted that if they captured him alive, the church would pay a reward. But his greedy thoughts ended quickly when Eugene glared at him with his red eyes. The mercenary was thrown back, and the others realized Eugene was no ordinary person. They kept attacking, and one yelled that the vampire's head was his. However, Eugene was too fast and dodged every attack. A huge man with a massive mace charged at him, yelling that he would crush them all with his weapon. The man was shocked when Eugene blocked the attack with just one hand. Eugene said the day was ending and that the night was his time. He used his claws to finish off the mercenary with a single blow. He used the darkness and said that night was the best time to spill blood. The group's leader yelled for his men to stop attacking blindly because Eugene was a monster. Suddenly, the villagers arrived with torches and were horrified by the bloody scene. The village chief looked at the dead bodies and asked Eugene if he had caused this. Eugene denied it and said he had found the bodies on his way back from hunting. He pointed and claimed the culprits were a pack of dire wolves. To everyone's surprise, a pack of dire wolves was standing nearby. Eugene explained that he had killed a few wolves, but the rest might still be around. A villager confirmed that there were claw marks on the mercenaries' bodies. Another man yelled that they had all been attacked by wolves. The chief apologized to Eugene for doubting him. He suggested burying the bodies in the village. Miriam called Eugene a liar, saying the wolves only showed up because they smelled the blood and that Eugene had made the claw marks himself to hide his actions. The fairy wondered why he cared so much about his reputation with humans. Eugene found a letter in the pocket of one of the dead mercenaries. He handed it to the chief and asked him to read it. The chief recognized the seal of Lord Tywin and was shocked by the contents. He frantically shouted the name Pell and asked if the boy was in the village. It turned out that a boy named Pelid might be the illegitimate son of the powerful Lord Tywin. Eugene then remembered the mercenary leader's last moments. The leader was surprised by Eugene's strength and wondered where he came from, but Eugene gave him no time to think, going all out on him. The leader yelled for his men to fight, saying that Eugene was just a monster with 2 arms and 2 legs. But the leader soon realized they couldn't even run away. He decided to attack Eugene himself, charging forward. Eugene prepared for the fight with a cold, determined look. Eugene landed a powerful punch to the leader's face, sending the man flying into a tree. Eugene then kicked the mercenary away, ending the fight. The leader begged him to stop, saying he could not take any more damage. Lying on the ground, he asked if Eugene had been waiting for them. The man claimed they just had business in the village and did not want trouble. Eugene declared that the village was his and demanded to know why they were really there. With a smirk, Eugene asked if they had been planning to kill the entire village. The mercenary confessed that they were hired by Lord Tywin's legitimate sons and had brought many men in case things went wrong. Eugene realized that the blonde knight who instigated everything was Bertel Taiwan, the general manager of the vampire pursuit team in his past life. He understood that Bertel knew the mercenaries' greed would cause a massacre, which is how Eugene had been discovered by the Holy Knights before. Meanwhile, the mercenary kept begging, saying he would never have come if he had known Eugene was there. Eugene told him to leave, warning him to watch out for wolves. The man was shocked and started thanking him for sparing his life, but Eugene did not forgive him and killed him with a fatal blow to the neck. Miriam asked why he killed him. Eugene replied that since his vampire identity had been discovered, he could not let the man live after getting all the information he needed. Just then, the pack of wolves appeared, drawn by the scent of blood. Meanwhile, the chief confirmed that the mercenaries came to take Peled to the castle. They remembered that Peled's mother had died, and he had been living alone. Eugene offered to take the boy to the castle safely. He said that since he lived in the forest, he could escort the boy and keep him safe from the wild beasts. The village chief was surprised and said he could not ask Eugene to do such a thing. But Eugene claimed that a knight could not ignore this duty. Miriam called him shameless and was speechless at his daring move. The villagers were also shocked, and the chief stammered the word knight. Miriam kept panicking, unable to believe what she heard. With a smile, Eugene said his introductions were late. He introduced himself as Knight Eugene from the Eugene family, and to Miriam's shock, the villagers believed him. Eugene explained to Miriam that the people in the village had never seen a real noble. Because of this, they would not know the difference if he pretended to be one. The villagers then asked him many questions about his past in the forest. Eugene simply replied that he had his reasons for cutting off contact with people. The chief said the village was poor and could not pay for his services, but Eugene said it was no problem and asked to stay for one night. The next day, Eugene stood by the window and tested his new ability against the sunlight. With his red eyes, he watched his hands turn into black scales. He noticed the scales blocked the light well, which would make traveling easier. Miriam called him stupid and asked why he lied like that. Eugene said it did not matter since he would be leaving soon and no one would find out. But the fairy insisted and asked what his real goal was in all of this. Before he could answer, one of the villagers informed him they were ready to leave. Eugene explained that titles were more trustworthy than long explanations, and a title reduced the lies he needed to tell from 100 down to 10. Eugene knew that real nobles would not fall for such a quick lie. Because of this, he decided he would do everything he could to make that lie real. The chief gave him a letter of introduction and asked him to take care of Peled. The young boy, Peled, introduced himself and said it was a pleasure to meet him. And so, Eugene and Peled left the village and started their journey to the castle. During their journey, Eugene and Peled followed a long road through the mountains. When they saw a village, Peled asked if it was Brahmi's, and Eugene confirmed that it was. Eugene asked if Peled knew how to read, and Peled said his late mother taught him. He explained that the man his mother loved taught her how to read and write. Miriam suggested that Eugene ask Peled to teach him how to read, too. Peled was surprised when Eugene asked him to teach him to read, wondering why a knight did not know how. Eugene made up a story about his family losing their money long ago. He kept up the act, walking with a sad look in front of the boy, because he knew that once he had Peled's trust, it would cover up all his lies. Miriam was impressed with the performance and complimented him. But she warned him that if he lied too much, people would start to suspect him. Peled's eyes began to shine, and Eugene realized the boy believed the story completely. Peled apologized, saying he had not trusted Eugene at first because of the rumors. He admitted that everyone in the village called Eugene a monster, which influenced him. But from now on, Peled said he would believe what he saw. The boy even offered to teach Eugene to read whenever they had time. Suddenly, Eugene imagined using his magic to create an ice dagger and stabbing Peled in the eye without mercy. The young man screamed in pain from the imagined surprise attack. This was only an imagination test of Peled's reaction. In reality, they were attacked by a group of bandits on the road. Peled was terrified and could not believe they were being robbed. The bandit leader grinned and said their scared faces saved him time. He ordered them to hand over everything valuable or face consequences. But before he could finish speaking, Eugene attacked the leader with his sword. With a single strike, Eugene killed the bandit leader. Peled was shocked and frozen, not understanding what happened. One of the bandits screamed in anger, seeing his brother killed right in front of him. Eugene told them they had done what he asked quickly and efficiently. The enraged bandit charged at Eugene with an axe, but he was no match. Eugene cut him down with his sword without mercy. In a quick move, Eugene spun and killed another bandit. The last bandit begged for his life and pleaded not to be killed. But Eugene did not forgive him and prepared for the final blow. With a swift move, he finished off the last bandit without hesitation. Eugene then looked at the dead bodies and said he did not understand humans. He wondered why they always try to rob and harm the weaker ones. Holding the last bandit's body, he asked if it was okay to hurt the weak. Finally, he turned to Peled and asked if he would understand these things once he learned to read. Peled was speechless and completely shocked by Eugene's question. Eugene reminded him that he had promised to believe what he saw. With a serious look, Eugene promised he would not let a single drop of blood touch Peled. After a while, they reached the city of Brahmis and began exploring. They saw a vendor selling rare herbs from the northern dungeon for 20 coins. At another stall, a customer complained about the price, saying he found it cheaper somewhere else. Miriam was fascinated by the city and all the interesting things there. Peled warned Eugene to be careful because the merchants were ruthless. He said the village chief always became confused when he visited the city. Eugene said he needed money first, then he could worry about that. He asked Peled to wait and went into a leather and fur shop. He showed the shopkeeper the pelts of the wolves he had hunted and asked for a price estimate. The shopkeeper was surprised to see it was dire wolf leather and that Eugene had brought a large quantity. The man looked Eugene up and down suspiciously, judging by his old clothes. The shopkeeper smiled slyly, deciding Eugene was easy to cheat. He offered 18 silver coins, falsely claiming the leather was damaged. Eugene immediately glared at him, his red eyes glowing brightly. With a quick move, he grabbed the shopkeeper by the collar, startling him. The shopkeeper was terrified by Eugene's red eyes. Scared, he stammered that dire wolf leather was rare and limited. He asked Eugene to calm down and talk things out. He nervously laughed and raised the offer to 253 coins. Eugene just stared with a cold, piercing gaze, saying nothing. The man started sweating and raised the offer to 25 coins. Peled, worried, shouted 28 coins to try and help the negotiation, but Eugene remained silent. The shopkeeper wondered how much more Eugene wanted. Finally, the man offered 30 silver coins, and Eugene accepted the offer. Later that night, they made camp, and Eugene tried to read an ancient scroll. He noted that Peled had taught him the basics, but he was far from being able to read properly. The writing looked like squiggles, and he felt frustrated. Miriam complimented his new clothes, saying they looked decent for the money he spent. She was surprised the market had been so generous on their first visit. The fairy complained that he should have bargained for more and bought silk clothes, but Eugene said he only needed something to block the sunlight. Miriam then said that vampires were the nobles of nobles and should have ambition. Eugene asked how she knew so much, and she said she learned in the spirit realm. She advised him to study ancient literature, but Eugene said he could not read. Suddenly, Peled appeared and called out to him, pulling Eugene from his thoughts. The young man asked with a strange smile who Eugene was talking to. Eugene pretended to be talking to himself and asked if Peled was okay, mentioning that ordinary people were not used to seeing dead bodies like that. Peled told him not to worry, saying he still had plenty of energy. He smiled and offered to teach Eugene to read as much as he wanted, since they had plenty of paper. So the two spent the night around the campfire, with Peled teaching Eugene. Eugene was surprised at how quickly he was learning and asked if that was normal. Peled said he was extraordinary, as it usually took a year to learn. After the lesson, Eugene asked if Peled was ready to become a noble son. The young man said his mother never fully explained it, and it had not fully sunk in yet. He also admitted he did not expect Lord Tywin to welcome him easily. Suddenly, a group of knights approached their camp in the forest. The group's leader greeted them and asked if he could ask a question. Eugene stood up, alert, as the armed men came closer. The leader noted that they were real knights, unlike the mercenaries from before. Eugene knew that lying now would raise suspicion, so he decided to tell the truth about their journey. The group's leader then said they were also heading to the castle and asked to camp with them. One of the younger knights complained about the decision, but the leader scolded him. The leader apologized to Eugene, saying the young man was new and did not know how to be social. The leader introduced himself as Part and asked who Eugene was. Eugene introduced himself as Yan Eugene. The young knight laughed, not believing that Eugene was a real knight. He asked if Eugene was actually a real knight. The young man laughed and said he had never heard of the House Eugene in his entire life. With a wicked smile, he accused Eugene of being an imposter. Eugene realized he could not keep up the lie anymore, as he had already told Peled he was a knight. He understood that if this continued, things would become complicated. With a cold look, he thought that he could easily kill them all since there were not many of them. Suddenly, Part hit Rabin on the shoulder and called him a fool. He then landed a powerful punch right in Rabin's face in front of everyone. The blow was so strong that Rabin flew backward and hit the ground hard. Part then bowed and apologized for his recruit's rudeness. Eugene told him to forget the apology and just find a spot to camp. Eugene knew that from now on, people would often doubt him because of his lie, and to avoid problems, he needed to become a real knight as soon as possible. Rabin woke up confused, not understanding why Part had attacked him. He got up and wondered why Part had hit Eugene. Part called him a fool and said he had no will to live. He scolded him and said Rabin should be thanking him for saving his life. Part explained that Rabin could not judge by appearances and did not see what was right in front of him. With a serious look, Part asked if Rabin knew how much the cloak Eugene was wearing cost. It turned out Eugene's cloak was high class, reinforced with rare lyanthrop leather. Part said the cheapest one cost over 10 silver coins, which was 3 times Rabin's salary. He added that the fact Eugene knew how to read meant he was no ordinary person. Part explained that Eugene was about to draw his sword, and they all would have been killed. Rabin was shocked and asked how Part knew that so quickly. The leader revealed that he saw Eugene preparing to attack, putting his hand inside his cloak to draw his sword. Part said if he had been 1 second slower, Rabin's head would have been cut off. Part then said Rabin had no idea how terrifying a true knight could be. He explained that a knight trains with a wooden sword from birth. They enter dangerous dungeons and kill monsters without fear. Only those who spill a lot of blood and are noticed by nobles are finally knighted in a grand ceremony. Part said impersonating a knight was a serious crime, and it was a problem because someone who claims to be a knight at 20 must have considerable skill. Rabin asked if that meant Eugene was stronger than the squad leader. He also mentioned he heard that the newly discovered dungeon might open soon. Eugene overheard the entire conversation and realized the title of knight carried a lot of weight. He also found it strange that the Taiwan family hired mercenaries instead of using their own soldiers. Suddenly, Pelid noticed Eugene walking toward the knights. With a smile, Eugene approached Part and said he heard they were going to the castle. He proposed that they travel together since they were heading to the same place. Rabin was captivated by Eugene's good looks, and Part was completely confused by the offer. After a few days, they finally arrived at the village of Martella in the Taiwan state. Eugene was relieved that the knights believed his story, but he knew the real trouble was about to begin. Miriam appeared and said she spied on the knights as Eugene asked. She found out that Lord Taiwan's health was so bad he could die at any moment. She also learned that a new dungeon had been discovered, but the family did not have the money to explore it. Eugene became thoughtful at the idea of a new dungeon opening in the area. Miriam then asked what would happen to Pelid if Lord Taiwan died. She worried he would become an orphan again, but Eugene said that was not his problem. The fairy started to cry, fearing Pelid would be killed by his half-brothers for nothing. Eugene realized Lord Taiwan had likely summoned Pelid to see him one last time. With that, he understood that both his and Pelid's futures were about to change somehow. After more travel, they finally reached their destination. Before them stood the large and impressive castle of Roses, the home of Lord Taiwan. As they entered the castle, they were impressed by the grand size of the place. Miriam got excited and said Eugene needed to climb the ranks and live in a castle like this, but he told her to be quiet and focus, as they had more important things to do. Suddenly, a guard stopped them and asked their business at the castle. Part introduced himself as a mercenary from the Phelan Guild and asked who the guard was. Then, a blond man introduced himself as Kamer, the hero of Taiwan. He asked Part if the merchandise was in the cart, and Part confirmed that it was. Kamer then noticed Eugene standing there and asked why he was not moving. Eugene introduced himself as the knight Yan Eugene, which surprised Kamer. Before Eugene could introduce Pelid, his brother Bertel suddenly appeared. Eugene recognized the familiar voice and remembered his painful past. Bertel approached with an air of superiority and a rose emblem on his chest, saying it was his duty as the castle's protector. Eugene could not forget the voice of the man who had tormented him so much. He remembered how Bertel and Dearth had relentlessly pursued him without rest after he was discovered hiding in the forest. Eugene glared at the knight Bertel Taiwan with hatred and a desire for revenge. Bertel was the second son of the Taiwan family and a knight of noble lineage. Kamer asked his brother what he was doing there, and Bertel replied with sarcasm, saying he knew exactly what Kamer meant. Eugene interrupted their argument and stepped into the brothers' conversation. He handed over the letter from the village chief and said he came on the chief's orders. Bertel was surprised to hear the village's name and took the letter with curiosity. He looked suspiciously at Eugene from head to toe. Kammer snatched the letter from his brother's hands to read it. Kammer recognized the village chief's name, but Bertel remained suspicious. Upon reading the letter, Kammer was shocked by the news of the mercenaries' deaths. He realized the boy next to Eugene was his father's illegitimate son. Peled shyly introduced himself, and Kammer greeted him with a mocking smile. Bertel then said they were expecting Peled and that his father wanted to see him, putting on a fake smile. He ordered the guards to take the boy to be washed and dressed. Peled was led away by the guards while Bertel watched him with hatred. Eugene interrupted the proceedings and said he wanted to discuss his reward first. He demanded a meeting with Lord Tiwen, but Bertel immediately refused the request. With a hateful stare, Bertel said it was impossible and that Eugene could not see his father. He explained that his father's condition was critical and offered to pay Eugene in gold to leave. However, Eugene did not back down, saying he had gone through a lot of trouble to bring Peled. Bertel then threatened him and told him not to make him repeat himself. Kammer intervened and asked what the problem was with a quick meeting, but Bertel insisted that his father could barely stay awake and could not receive a stranger. The two brothers started arguing and trading insults in front of everyone. Bertel looked angrily at his brother and told him not to twist his words. Kammer apologized to Eugene for the scene and for his brother's attitude. With a fake smile, he said goodbye and told Eugene to go home safely. Kammer then approached Peled and offered to guide him through the castle as his new brother. Seeing this, Eugene realized Bertel truly would not let him meet the Lord. Suddenly, a deep voice interrupted the conversation, calling for the second son of Taiwan. A strong, red-haired man appeared, carrying two men over his shoulders. He threw the men to the ground, grinning, and said he caught them robbing the local villagers. He suggested that one of them be punished as an example. Bertel was annoyed, as these men were just temporary mercenaries for the dungeon. The red-haired man suggested they talk inside to avoid being watched. Part recognized the man and wondered if he was the famous Sir Galfredic. Eugene grew curious and asked Part if he knew him. The mercenary explained that Galfredic had placed third in a major tournament hosted by the Evergrow family. In addition, he was a very promising knight with excellent strength and skill. On the day of the tournament, he had defeated over 1,000 competitors alone. Part wondered why such a powerful man would come to this area. He suspected the reason was the new dungeon that had been discovered, since conquering a dungeon first brings great fame and is a dangerous task. Part thought Galfredic probably wanted to use this dungeon to be knighted by a bigger family. Eugene then turned to Part and asked if his contract ended today. With a smile, Eugene offered the mercenary leader a new job. Bertel understood that his brother Kammer wanted to clear the dungeon to win support from the people. In his office, Kammer thought about what to do since he could not just hire anyone. Suddenly, one of his servants told him that Sir Eugene was asking to see him. Kammer remembered he was the knight who brought Peled and told the servant to let the young man in. Eugene entered the office, and Kammer greeted him formally. Kammer said Eugene could rest assured that Peled was safe and would be rewarded. Furthermore, he thanked Eugene for giving him the letter in front of his brother. Kammer was happy because thanks to that, he could hold his head high. Eugene said he only had business with the Lord and did not expect a third person to be involved. Kammer was then surprised and started to understand Eugene's intentions. He asked if Eugene wanted to see his father, but Eugene said he had a proposal instead. Eugene asked to be included in the dungeon subjugation team. Eugene held back a laugh as Kammer stared at him seriously. Suddenly, Kammer burst out laughing at Eugene's unexpected proposal. He found it very funny and asked with a smile if Eugene was truly a knight. With a mocking look, he repeated the question, doubting Eugene's abilities. Kammer said he heard about the 5 bandits and asked if Eugene just wanted a reputation. But Eugene replied that for him, the proposal had no disadvantage. He then explained that he wanted 100 silver coins and half of the dungeon's treasure. Kammer was confused because the offer was far below the current market price. With a smile, Eugene said that Kammer was the one who was in a hurry, not him. Kammer asked Eugene what he wanted, and Eugene repeated his earlier offer, 100 silver coins and half of the dungeon's loot. Kammer found the proposal suspiciously cheap. He thought that knights value honor highly, and since Eugene had no backing and did not want much money, glory must be everything to a knight like him. Kammer also thought about everything he had heard about Eugene. Eugene then said with a smile that Kammer was the one in a hurry, not him. Kammer was shocked by Eugene's bold statement. But soon after, he smiled and realized the young man was quite clever because he knew exactly what to say and was not just any knight. So, Kammer accepted the deal, as there was no reason to refuse such a good offer. Kammer extended his hand to close the deal with Eugene. Eugene thought that magic stones are difficult to purify, but monster parts sell well. Part then said he could introduce Eugene to a guild, and that Eugene should ask for the monster parts, which would give Lord Kammer no reason to refuse the deal. Bertel then complained to Galfredic that the dungeon was not a playground for children. He explained that inside, one mistake could be fatal, and it was kill or be killed. For that reason, he would not accept an amateur in the group, especially one chosen by his brother. Furthermore, Bertel knew that Kammer had no connections with the local nobles. Bertel told Galfredic to talk to Eugene himself if he had a problem. Then, Bertel approached and said he was just talking with the new knight. Bertel introduced Eugene, and his mercenaries to the group. Bertel was shocked to see that the man from before was the leader of a mercenary group. With a mocking smile, Bertel said they could not accept a stranger with no skills. But Kammer interrupted him and said he could at least confirm Eugene's abilities. Kammer explained that he heard from his new brother about the bandits on the border, and that Eugene had killed them all with a single dagger on his way here. Suddenly, Bertel threw a dagger at Eugene to test him. With a quick move, Eugene managed to dodge it, and the dagger stuck into the wall right behind him, grazing his face. Galfredic then smiled and approached Eugene to provoke him. He apologized for his earlier rudeness and approached with a challenging look. The knight said Eugene looked like a young master with his pale, unscarred skin and grinned. He then challenged Eugene to show him what he could do. So the two got ready for a duel in the castle courtyard in front of everyone. The news spread, and everyone got excited to see Sir Galfredic's duel. The crowd wondered if he was even human, saying he tore monsters apart with his bare hands. Everyone was eager to see what the third-place winner of the tournament could do. Even without knowing who his opponent was, they already felt sorry for Eugene. But Eugene was not worried and prepared for the fight with a confident look. Galfredic drew his sword with a smile and got ready for the duel. Eugene stared back at him with a calm expression. He turned and got ready for the duel that was about to begin. Suddenly, Eugene dropped his sword on the ground, which shocked Galfredic. A man then raised his hand and announced that the fight was ready to begin. Then a guard rang a giant bell, and the duel finally started. Eugene then charged full speed at his opponent. Soon after, the two crossed their swords and sparks flew everywhere. The sound of clashing metal echoed throughout the castle courtyard. The fight continued with both of them moving quickly around the combat area. Galfredic smiled and invited Eugene to fight harder with a hand gesture. With a series of blows, Eugene was pushed back by the force of the attack. Rabin got excited and asked if Eugene was winning. But Part, with a smile on his face, noticed that Eugene's fighting style was rougher than expected and had no pattern. That is why he found Eugene's style to be wild and completely unpredictable. Eugene then realized what his opponent's true intention was. With a smile, Galfredic accused him of lying about being a real knight. Galfredic grinned and said Eugene had never been trained and just relied on brute force. Eugene replied that swordsmanship was not everything for a real knight. He then attacked with all his strength, saying his opponent talked too much during a fight. But the knight just smiled and challenged him to beat him so he would be quiet. So the two continued to fight, exchanging powerful blows. Galfredic used his strength and managed to push Eugene back. Eugene was surprised and struggled to stay standing against the attack. Even so, he did not give up and blocked the blade with a determined look. The impact of the swords was so strong that it created a huge shockwave in the courtyard. Bertel wondered if Eugene had been knocked out by that blow. However, Eugene was still standing amidst all the dust and destruction. Suddenly, Eugene remembered something and wondered who this man really was. Soon after, a dark and mysterious energy began to come out of Eugene's body. With this new power, he charged forward and attacked Galfredic with everything he had. The knight managed to block, but noticed that Eugene was faster and stronger. He was impressed because Eugene learned very quickly in a fight. Now Eugene could dodge his blows much more easily. Galfredic got even more excited, and the fight intensified. The two continued to trade powerful blows in the middle of the castle arena. The exchange of blows was so fast that people could barely follow their movements. The fight continued with a test of raw strength to see who was stronger. With smiles on their faces, the two stared each other down in a power struggle. Without their swords, the fight was now hand-to-hand, and brute force would decide everything. Galfredik was shocked because Eugene was smaller but had incredible strength. However, Eugene admitted that his opponent's brute strength was greater than his, but he did not give up and prepared to use a different tactic. He knew that Galfredik had the advantage in experience, so Eugene went on the attack. Eugene was then surprised by his opponent's fighting stance. With a quick move, the knight threw Eugene hard onto the courtyard ground. Galfredik smiled, seeing Eugene fall toward the ground. The impact was so strong that the stone floor cracked. Then Galfredik moved in to finish the fight, but Eugene managed to defend himself at the last second and blocked the attack. So the two continued to fight with an intense exchange of hand-to-hand combat. Galfredik noticed that Eugene's movements were not precise or trained, but he had a survival instinct and learned very quickly in combat. Suddenly, the knight admitted that he was defeated in their contest. With a final blow, Eugene landed a powerful attack on Galfredik. The knight was sent flying by the force of the decisive attack. He flew and crashed hard into a castle wall, ending the fight. With Galfredik defeated, the duel finally ended. The announcer declared that the grand winner of the duel was Eugene, and so the knight Yan Eugene was declared the winner of the fight at the castle. The crowd cheered, and everyone was shocked by Eugene's strength. Rabbins celebrated and shouted that Eugene was their new knight. Defeated on the ground, Galfredik could not believe what had happened. He was still in shock and looked up at the sky, completely speechless. The knight could not understand how he was defeated by such an unknown person. Suddenly, he got up, and with his eyes glowing red, he charged forward. Eugene turned around and prepared himself for round two, but Galfredik just smiled and raised Eugene's arm in a gesture of victory. To everyone's surprise, he called for a round of applause for the winner. The knight then started chanting Eugene's name, and the crowd followed. Bertel was furious and could not believe what he was seeing. Later, a banquet was served for Eugene in his rooms. Eugene felt awkward since he did not need food to survive. The servant said he had orders from Kammer to take care of his meals. The maid also asked if the lighting was okay, as she heard about his sensitive skin. Miriam started laughing and wondered if Eugene would get a stomachache from all that food. But Eugene accepted the kindness and sent all the servants out of the room. With his red eyes glowing, he said he preferred to be alone. After that day, the way people saw him changed completely. Kammer showed up and greeted him, asking if he slept well last night. Kammer noticed Eugene had rejected all the extra benefits, and Eugene was at a loss for words. Suddenly, Rabbin appeared and greeted him with a very low bow. Galfredik also showed up and attached himself to Eugene, calling him friend and comrade. The knight asked if Eugene slept well because his face still hurt from yesterday's duel. He showed his bruised face, and Eugene wondered if he wanted another beating. Galfredik invited him to train, and Kammer got excited to watch the fight. Eugene realized the knight did not care if he was a noble or not. Even so, Eugene was still not used to having so many people around him. Suddenly, Peled appeared and called out to Eugene with a smile. The young man asked if Eugene was doing well, and everyone stared at Peled curiously. Meanwhile, in a dark room, someone begged their lord for their life, but their screams were useless, and they were killed without mercy. The man then said, "None of this would have happened if he had just done his job." Bertel then appeared and said the red-eyed knight would not have come, and because of that, his entire plan had failed and everything went wrong. The man begged for forgiveness, and Bertel complained about the mercenaries who were defeated. In a rage, Bertel asked the man if his eyes were just for decoration and attacked him with everything he had. Bertel called the man useless and prepared for the final blow. He plunged a dagger into the man's eye, killing him without mercy. The other servants were terrified by the scene and trembled with fear. Bertel wondered what he should do to solve the problem because he knew he could not simply kill someone who was already inside the castle. But soon after, he got a clever idea to get rid of Eugene. He decided it was the only way, and that it would be a clean elimination. Meanwhile, Peled was in his room, lying on the bed, deep in thought. Eugene then arrived and said Bertel sent him to the dungeon to meet his end. Peled confirmed it, saying he was sent to the dungeon to meet his end, too. Eugene then reminded him of the mercenaries attacked by the wolves, nodding that they never wanted Peled to reach the castle alive from the start. But Eugene said there was a way for him to survive all of this. He offered Peled the chance to become his vassal and join him. Eugene explained that Peled was already 16 and could choose his own path. He could either stay hidden and wait for his death or fight with all his might. On the day the dungeon opened, no one knew what kind of monsters would appear. Galfredic explained that the goal was to advance as far as possible and retreat if a strong monster showed up. He then sent the scouts to find the dungeon entrance in the forest. One of the porters planned to fake an injury so he would not have to fight on the front lines. He said that if it got dangerous, they could just run and save themselves. Suddenly, Bertel appeared, and the porter was startled by his presence. The knight asked where Pelid was, and the man stammered, not knowing what to say. One of the men pointed, and Bertel was confused by what he saw. Pelid was handing a snack to Eugene, telling him to come back safe. Bertel was furious when he saw this and angrily approached the two. He yelled for Pelid and found him standing next to Eugene. With a hateful glare, he asked if the young man had forgotten what he was told. The knight ordered him to grab his bag and get to his position immediately. Bertel became even more irritated as Pelid ignored him and stayed put. And so Eugene and the knight stared each other down defiantly. Bertel then grabbed Pelid and yelled for him to get back to his post. But Eugene grabbed Bertel's hand and told him to take his hand off the boy. Bertel was shocked and could not believe what he just heard from Eugene. Eugene then asked if Bertel had lost his mind, sending a child into the dungeon. Bertel called him rude and said he just wanted to make his brother stronger. Angrily, he said Eugene had no right to control the boy. But Eugene replied that Bertel was the one who did not know his place. With a serious look, Eugene revealed that Pelid had become his vassal yesterday. Bertel was shocked by the news, and Eugene said everyone there was a witness. Eugene then said their bond was stronger than blood and threatened anyone who touched Pelid. Eugene then faced Bertel and invited him to a fight if he wanted to warm up. The knight was furious and yelled, asking who gave Eugene permission to do that. He also said that taking in a bastard son from another family would block Eugene's future. Meanwhile, the soldiers commented that the duel between the two leaders was incredible. One of them wondered how long it would take to get that strong, and the other joked about him. Suddenly, Kammer appeared and said he would also trust his younger brother to Eugene. He explained that Pelid was already an adult and could choose his own path in life. Eugene then thought that Pelid was the prey and that survival was not easy for the weak. That is why if you cannot become strong, the only option is to join a pack. Kammer then invited Eugene to his office and asked if he knew how to read. Meanwhile, a scout reported that there were no monsters nearby and the area was clear. Galfredic then said they could open the dungeon now, and Eugene agreed with the idea. And so, the massive dungeon door finally began to open for the group. The knight then looked back and told everyone to survive on their own. The soldiers got ready with their weapons and armor to enter the dungeon. With Eugene and Galfredic in the lead, the group finally advanced into the darkness. Kammer said goodbye and told them he would see them in 4 days, while Pelid wished them good luck. The door then closed, and a voice wished for the gods to protect them all inside. Inside the dungeon, a dark and twisting path awaited them. Immediately, a wave of goblins ambushed the group. Galfredic and Eugene fought hard, giving everything they had to defend their comrades. One soldier was relieved to be alive, but Galfredic roared at him. The knight complained that they could not even keep their battle formation. He ordered everyone to hold their positions and continue fighting. The archers fired arrows toward the cave ceiling, but the goblins kept attacking and the danger grew fast. The relentless horde pressed forward on the group. The porter suddenly understood that volunteering for the dungeon was a terrible mistake. Scared, he decided he had to leave and ran as quickly as he could. But as he tried to escape, he ran into more goblins in the dark. Just as a monster was about to attack him, a blade saved him at the last moment. Eugene called him a fool and asked if he truly thought there would be no monsters in a dungeon. Galfredic sternly told the porter, "The safest thing now is to stay together." He yelled for everyone to raise their swords and hold the line. The soldiers fought bravely, but the goblin horde seemed endless. Galfredic judged the group's state as pathetic and wondered how they could win. Suddenly, a soldier warned that the monsters were attacking again. To make matters worse, another soldier yelled that more creatures were coming from behind. Eugene offered to cover the rear flank and charged back into the darkness. Galfredic shouted for Eugene to wait, warning that it was too dangerous to go alone, but Eugene ignored the warning and disappeared into the dungeon by himself. The knight was shocked and confused by how quickly it happened. Eugene moved too fast to see clearly, killing the monsters in a flash of speed. He easily crushed a goblin's head. Galfredic then yelled for Part to follow and provide support for Eugene. The knight was deeply impressed, unable to figure out how Eugene had traveled so far in seconds. Suddenly, Eugene was back. He announced he had taken care of the rear and found something interesting. Galfredik was speechless because Eugene held up a simple, glowing herb, unaware of what it was. Even with incredible fighting skills, he was ignorant of simple dungeon loot. After the intense fight, the group rested while the injured received medical attention. A soldier reported that all the blue mana stones were collected. However, Eugene was disappointed. They killed many monsters but found very little value. He noted the stones were blue, unlike the red one he got from the roamer. Miriam appeared and explained that the stone's quality depends on the monster's strength. She reminded him that the roamer he faced was special and very powerful. Eugene realized his good fortune in consuming that creature's red stone. Miriam suggested that much stronger monsters might be found deeper in this dungeon. The break soon ended, and Galfredik shouted for everyone to return to formation. Galfredik yelled at his men, calling them cowards for being afraid. He declared that he and Eugene would lead, and no one was permitted to flee the battle. Eugene privately thought this was his first real time in a proper dungeon, too. Galfredik came over and told Eugene the mercenaries were useless, and Eugene needed to step up. The knight warned that the enemies ahead would be on a different level of threat. In the darkness, they saw a formation of orcs using goblins as auxiliary soldiers. The human soldiers huddled together, terrified of what was to come. Eugene realized a powerful, high-rank monster awaited them in the depths. He remembered gaining a powerful new ability after eating the red stone from the master of the swamp. He wondered if consuming another special stone would grant him another ability. Using his greatly increased senses, he detected over 50 large footsteps 100 meters away. Galfredik was impressed by Eugene's sharp sense of hearing. He handed a spear to Eugene and asked him to launch it. With immense, raw strength, Eugene threw the weapon like a red bolt of lightning. The spear hit one of the orcs directly and exploded with a devastating force. With the first strike delivered, Galfredik ordered all troops to charge with maximum effort. Eugene was already deep in the fight as the rest of the group followed. He smashed one of the monsters. He punched an orc hard in the eye with savage power. Then he plunged his sword into the monster's head without hesitation. Eugene blocked an attack and immediately prepared a counter. With a single, slicing blow, he cut the orc completely in half in a geyser of blood. Covered in filth, Eugene wiped his lips with a wild, terrifying expression. That day, the mercenaries fought while witnessing pure butchery. Suddenly, Eugene used his ability and transformed his arm into black, strong scales. With his newly transformed hand, he crushed the head of one of the orcs. His sword technique was precise and graceful, and his posture remained noble throughout the bloodshed. Even with his dignified stance, a dark, evil energy poured from his body. The mercenaries were stunned because he was unlike any knight they had ever known. Galfredik's expression was no longer admiration. It was fear, because Eugene looked like a blood-drinking beast who was capable of destroying anyone and everyone. After the fight, the group rested around a campfire surrounded by dead monsters. One of the men tended to the wounded, while everyone else looked exhausted and scared. The bodies of goblins and orcs were scattered all over the dungeon floor. Galfredik realized that most of his troops had lost the will to continue. He understood it was not physical exhaustion, but mental fatigue from witnessing the carnage. Therefore, the knight decided it was impossible for the group to keep advancing. He approached Eugene and suggested they turn back since they had already completed their goal of finding high-rank monsters. Eugene said his stamina was still fine, and it was a shame to turn back now. Galfredik was left with no choice and yelled that if Eugene was going forward, they were all going together. Eugene then smashed another orc to clear a path in the dungeon. He told Galfredik to lead the rest of the subjugation group out of the cave because from here on, he would continue with only his trusted mercenaries. The other soldiers were relieved. Galfredik wondered if Eugene was showing consideration. The knight then realized that Eugene made him reconsider what it truly meant to be a knight. And so, Eugene and his 2 men advanced alone through the dungeon's darkness. Rabin complained that he did not want to go and was terrified of dying there. But he calmed down, knowing that Eugene could defeat even a troll by himself. Suddenly, the young man tripped and fell to the ground after stepping on something strange and sticky. He looked to the side and realized he had just stepped on a giant spider. To everyone's fear, they were surrounded by a swarm of enormous cave spiders. These creatures lived in groups and used venom. Rabin screamed in desperation as the monsters advanced to attack him. Part said, "There are too many enemies, we should retreat for now." But Eugene wondered why they should retreat from this battle. With a quick slash, he cut one of the spiders in half without any trouble. Eugene said it was not a problem and continued to fight with all his strength. Part yelled for Rabin to join him, as Eugene was already in the middle of the fight. With a determined look, Eugene continued to fight alongside his men. Suddenly, Rabin was surrounded by spiders and screamed desperately for help. He was attacked by one of the creatures, but managed to defend himself with his sword. Eugene then rushed in and saved Rabin at the last second with a well-aimed strike. Rabin was speechless and completely shocked by Eugene's speed. Suddenly, Eugene grabbed Rabin and threw him away with incredible force. The young man flew through the air and landed on the ground, not understanding what was happening. While Rabin was still on the ground, Eugene charged forward and finished off all the surrounding spiders. With a smile, Rabin said, "Eugene is amazing," and suggested they head back. He turned to Part and asked if he agreed, but his commander was paralyzed with fear, trembling from head to toe. With wide eyes, Part stared into the darkness and wondered what was there. It turned out that among the roamer species, there were different ranks of power. Before them appeared the Spider Queen, a lord-rank monster and a very powerful one at that. Part was terrified of the creature and said they could not fight a lord. He insisted that at the very least, Galfredic should be there to help in the battle. Suddenly, Eugene called out to Part and Rabin with a serious, cold look. With his red eyes glowing, he told them to fall back because this prey belonged to him. Part understood the message, but he felt his body being controlled by a strange force. He realized that every nerve in his body was screaming at him to run from this place. Miriam appeared and said, "Their instincts have given in to the power difference with the master." Eugene then asked if the Spider Lord was on the same level as the Swamp Lord, but she said no. She also said it seemed to be stronger, so its mana stone would be bigger. With that thought, Eugene faced the creature. It let out a terrifying roar, but he was not afraid and said, "The harder the chest, the more exciting the treasure." After the battle, Eugene tested his new power on a small yellow spider. He used his ability and cut the creature in half with a super sharp thread of pure mana. Now wearing new clothes, he showed that he could control these threads to manipulate objects. It turned out that by consuming the Lord Rank stone, he had gained a second special ability. This new ability was called camouflage, which helped him hide better. By combining it with his skin reinforcement, he could finally walk in the sunlight. With this, Eugene no longer had to worry about avoiding daylight. Back at the castle, a large banquet was held, and everyone complimented Eugene's striking good looks. The women were charmed, having heard he defeated a giant spider all by himself. Miriam was happy with the attention, and the girls asked Eugene to tell his story. Two young women commented on his appearance and asked if he had elven ancestors. Eugene felt uncomfortable, thinking the situation had become even more complicated. However, he did not deny it, and one of the men shouted that this made perfect sense. Galfredic then understood why Eugene had such sharp eyes and ears in the dungeon, and how he had such graceful movements and superhuman strength in the fight. With a cold look, Eugene thought that Galfredic had figured out he was not an ordinary human. Galfredic became excited and said, "Who would have thought our hero had elven blood?" He then asked how Eugene managed to hide for so long with that appearance. Eugene thought his companion was strangely perceptive and observant, but with a smile, he simply said he never tried to hide his true appearance. Galfredic and the woman were left speechless by his cold, direct answer. The knight then commented that Eugene said that without changing his facial expression at all. Eugene realized that people often see what they want to see, not the truth. Besides the ability, he also gained something extra by consuming the magic stone. When one of his tattoos disappeared, strange memories surfaced in his mind. In these fragmented memories, he saw himself in an unknown place with gentle hands holding him. He saw a strange room with bells ringing and everyone looking at him. He wondered who the woman in the memory was, and if the memory was even real since he could not recall his past. The only thing he truly knew was his own name. Suddenly, he was pulled out of his thoughts and returned to the party at the castle. Rabin appeared with tears in his eyes and begged Eugene to save him. Galfredic held Rabin back and yelled that he heard everything, calling Rabin dead weight in the dungeon. The young man shouted that Eugene was not human and that anyone would have run from there. The knight scolded him and said he would put Rabin through special training. Amidst all the chaos, the only name Eugene clearly remembered was Eugene. But after that incident, he started to have a premonition about his future. He felt that if he kept removing the tattoos, he might uncover the truth. And with that, he would finally find out who he really was and where he came from. In the Lord's chamber, everyone gathered to hear about the success in the dungeon. Crema, Galfredic's third son, introduced himself, and Eugene did the same. Lord Tiwan then said Eugene must have had a difficult time. The Lord asked Eugene to hand over what he brought with him, and to everyone's surprise, the Lord handed Eugene a document to verify his status. With the document in hand, Eugene said, "Thank you." Miriam celebrated the achievement. Suddenly, the Lord started coughing, and his son Camer rushed to help him. The man said he could not die peacefully with his second son's ambition still causing trouble. But Camer reassured him, saying he would lead the territory the Lord built with pride. The Lord then said a territory was nothing and that Camer must take care of the people. With young Peled standing by his side, he said, "A lord must lead the people, not the land." In his final moments, he held Peled's hand and passed away peacefully. Eugene noticed that some people were mourning, but not everyone shared the sadness. Suddenly, Camer glared at Eugene with deep hatred and anger. At the Lord's funeral, not everyone seemed sad about what happened. Outside, Galfredic apologized for leaving during the funeral, but Camer understood. The knight then turned to Eugene and asked if he was truly going to stay here. Eugene said he wanted to go to the dungeon one more time because it felt like a waste to leave it. Galfredic thought it was a shame and said that Count Evero would have liked him very much. The knight approached and extended his hand for a farewell shake. With a smile, he said it was an honor to compete with such a strong knight. With a serious look, he hoped they would not meet as enemies next time. Eugene shook the knight's hand, and the two parted ways with respect. The two smiled at each other and finished the handshake firmly. And so Galfredic left, and Rabin waved goodbye as Eugene watched. Peled was confused because Eugene had said he was staying and asked what he was going to do next. Part explained that knights ride horses and that they were going to the trading company. With a smile, Part said they were going to buy a horse and sell the items from the dungeon. Peled got excited and said he would help as Eugene's attendant, but Eugene surprised him by saying he would not need his help for a while. The young man was confused and did not understand what Eugene meant. Suddenly, the scene changed. Peled was working hard at a busy port. He carried heavy boxes while a man yelled at him to work properly. It turned out they were in Marin, the largest commercial city in the kingdom of Kalar. Rabin boasted to the other workers, claiming the dungeon spoils belonged to a knight. The men were shocked to learn it was the knight who defeated a live troll. Suddenly, Rabin yelled at a merchant, telling him not to touch the items carelessly. Peled worked hard under the sun and felt exhausted from the heavy labor. He thought that Eugene's negotiations were taking far too long. Meanwhile, in a private room, Eugene was meeting with a man. The man introduced himself as Bill Moore and said he would handle all the spoils. Eugene was surprised, as he did not expect Part to introduce him to a major company representative. He realized this contact would be very useful, as he did not understand networking. Suddenly, another man entered the room and interrupted their conversation. With a sharp slap, he shoved Bill Moore aside and demanded to know who Sir Eugene was. Eugene and Part were instantly on high alert. The mercenary whispered that the situation could become tricky, and Eugene asked why. Part explained that the man was a secretary to the vice manager of the trading company. They likely came to steal the spoils by offering a low price. With a serious look, Eugene thought he needed to proceed cautiously. Bill Moore told the man, named Grail, that he was closing a deal with Eugene. Grail said that rumors about the knight who defeated a troll had spread throughout the port, but he believed it was just a rookie strategy to inflate the product's value. He then offered a special contract, planning to trick Eugene and rob him. Suddenly, Grail felt a strange pressure and was frightened by Eugene's presence. Eugene glared at him with a cold look, and the man wondered where that pressure came from. Scared, Grail introduced himself as the vice manager's secretary and claimed this was a great opportunity. With a cold stare, Eugene questioned what he meant by opportunity. The man nervously explained it was a chance to sell the items on better terms. Eugene repeated his words with an even more suspicious gaze. Terrified, the secretary said the guild's vice manager herself would handle the deal. He apologized for any disrespect, but Eugene continued to stare at him coldly. Grail panicked and ran out of the room, screaming for his life. Seeing this, Bill Moore became emotional, believing Eugene turned down the high-level offer for his sake. Because of this, the merchant promised to give his full support to Eugene from now on. With a small smile, Eugene said he liked the idea and accepted Bill Moore's proposal. The man stood up excitedly and asked when they could start working together. Eugene got up and told them to start right now, outside the shop. Meanwhile, Grail apologized to the vice manager for failing his mission. The woman told him not to worry, saying knights always cause trouble out of pride. With a wicked smile, she said they should get revenge by using their power as merchants. since their opponent was just a poor knight who did not even have a decent horse. So, she told Grail to give Eugene a gift he could not refuse. Later, Peled was shocked to learn he would be staying behind to sell the spoils. Eugene confirmed it and said Peled must sell everything he brings to Bill Moore. The young man was sad and asked why he had to stay behind again. He even asked if his skills were not good enough and offered to start training immediately. Eugene then asked what the true role of a squire was, leaving Peled speechless. The young man replied that a squire's role was to assist his knight in life and in battle. So Eugene explained that his duty was to take care of his daily life, and his mission as his squire was to sell the items and make money. He also told Peled to discuss the details with Bill Moore and learn about business. Peled then understood that if it were not for Eugene, he would have been dead long ago. As a reward, Eugene promised to teach him how to fight when they had more money. Eugene also said that one day Peled would help him in his battles, too. The young man was deeply moved by the promise, his eyes filling with tears. With a sincere smile, he accepted the order and swore to obey his command. With everything settled, they finally walked out into the streets of Marin City. After some shopping, a vendor said goodbye, and they continued on their way. Eugene wondered if money always ran out this quickly. Miriam also lamented the spending, and Part chuckled. Suddenly, Part froze, having seen something interesting. Before them, an imposing suit of plate armor shone brightly in a shop window. Part said the armor was every knight's dream, but Eugene just thought about how expensive it was. The mercenary explained that it was such a costly item that it was passed down for generations. Suddenly, Rabin came running and shouting desperately for Eugene. With a panicked look, he warned that a horde of roamers had appeared on the outskirts, and the monsters were trying to invade the city. He said the guilds could barely hold them back. Part told Eugene it was best to join the monster subjugation immediately, but Eugene wondered why he should get involved in that. Rabin then explained that unclaimed quests had no commission fee. In Marin, they could sell everything for free and make a lot of money. With his eyes sparkling, Rabin shouted that this was the perfect plan because they were going to get rich. Eugene agreed and told them to go, as there was no reason to hesitate. Suddenly, a voice yelled for them to wait, and Eugene wondered who it was. It was Grail, running and out of breath with a horse in hand. The man introduced himself and said, "The vice manager sent a warrior as a gift." He described the animal as a magnificent creature with a black coat and muscles like a god. Eugene grew suspicious and asked if the gift was really for him. Grail was startled by his gaze and stammered that they did not want anything in return. Eugene continued to stare at the man with his cold, red eyes. Scared, the secretary said it was just a small token of goodwill. Without wasting any time, Eugene took the reins and told Grail to thank the vice manager. Miriam got excited and told him to hurry up and make a lot of money from the hunt. Rabin was shocked by the horse's speed and asked what they should do. Part then yelled for his men to run and follow Eugene into battle. The scene then shifted to the outskirts of the city, where some goblins were in the forest. Suddenly, one of the monsters looked to the side, seeming to have sensed something strange. On his new horse, Eugene charged through the forest at high speed. He arrived at the battle, taking out one of the monsters on his way in. Miriam appeared worried and asked if the scale of the attack was too large. She feared the guild members who were at the front had already been defeated. But Eugene just replied that was a good thing, with a very cold look. He made it clear that he did not like sharing the spoils of battle one bit. And with that, the horse continued to run, destroying everything in its path. The bright sun shone through the trees as Eugene's horse carried him closer to his destination. He finally arrived at the battlefield and saw the army fighting against the monsters. There, a knight named Madria was facing a horde of orcs all by himself. He yelled that they were vile creatures and would never get past him. However, the monsters charged with everything they had and surrounded him, preparing for the final attack. The knight tried to escape, but his horse was knocked down in the chaos. Even on the ground, he introduced himself as Madria, the Knight of Justice of Marin. Madria grew scared, realizing he was completely cornered by the enemies. The monsters stared at him with pure malice and got ready to strike. In desperation, the knight screamed for his life, begging to be spared. One of the orcs attacked, but its blow was blocked at the very last second by a sword. Eugene had arrived with a sudden crash, mounted on his imposing black horse. Without wasting any time, he began cutting down all the monsters around him. Madria was shocked by Eugene's speed as he eliminated the creatures. In the blink of an eye, he took out all the orcs surrounding him. The knight then thanked him and asked for his savior's name. But suddenly an orc attacked from behind, and Eugene faced it coldly. Madria quickly killed the monster and turned back to Eugene with a smile. Eugene then questioned why he cared about names in such a dangerous moment. He pointed out that if they both died there, his name would not matter anyway. The knight agreed with him, saying that was fair and he understood. With a smile, he promised to ask again once they got out alive. Back in the city, he told everyone that hundreds of goblins and orcs had attacked them on the road. He boasted that at the crucial moment, the knight took them all out without hesitation, and in the end, they bravely protected the city of Marin. A man then asked who the knight he kept talking about was. With a serious look, he revealed that the hero's name was Yan Eugene. Everyone was shocked and immediately recognized the name of the knight who had cleared the dungeon. The crowd went wild and started chanting his name through the city streets. From a window, a man watched everything and noted that the whole city was shouting for Eugene. This was Louis Farron, the city's mayor, and he feared Eugene would become difficult to control. The mayor asked his granddaughter, Priscilla, if they should just let things be, but she said that the higher a knight's honor, the harder his eventual fall. Priscilla then asked if her grandfather had heard about Yan Eugene's attendant. With a smile, she revealed that the boy was actually the illegitimate son of House Tywin. Mayor Louis Farron was surprised and began to understand the full situation. Priscilla explained that Eugene wanted to make money to support the hidden heir. If they succeeded, the two could form powerful ties with the future head of House Tywin. The mayor praised his granddaughter, saying he now understood her intentions well. For that reason, he decided to send a gift to Eugene as a token of gratitude. He also said he would make her the official recommender for the gift, and she thanked her grandfather. Later that night, the moon illuminated the Merchant Guild's building. Priscilla picked up a cup and thought that a thirsty man seeks water. She said that a merchant only knows one path to follow for success. With a wicked smile, she revealed that the plan was to dig a well and wait. Eugene walked unknowingly toward his destination. The door opened, and she waited for him so he would drink every drop she offered. With a sweet smile, she welcomed Eugene to the guild. Wearing his new suit of armor, Eugene introduced himself as the savior of Marin. He said he came to say thanks, and she invited him to sit and talk. Priscilla observed him and wondered if he was really the knight from the stories. She thought he looked nothing like the knights she imagined. But with a fake smile, she said the mayor's gift suited him very well. Priscilla explained that the armor was a mix of iron and ogre bone. She asked how he felt, and Eugene said it would make the next dungeon easier. Eugene thanked her and said that because of her, his men were healthier. With a wicked smile, Priscilla said she was not expecting anything in return. But just as she was about to make a formal business proposal, Eugene stood up to leave. He said he would visit her again when the dungeon suppression was complete. Eugene also reminded her that their current contract ended there, and it might be the last time they spoke. He revealed that he was now going to focus only on collecting magic stones, and Priscilla became furious. Desperate, the woman yelled for Eugene to wait and not leave. Eugene stopped for a moment but did not say a single word to her. She then stood up and said, "There's still something they haven't discussed." Eugene turned around and asked what that would be. With a very mocking look, Priscilla glared at him and said he could not pretend not to have noticed forever. She then listed the most expensive armor, the warhorse, and the luxury meals he had received. One of the men even confirmed that the spoils did not cover half of everything he had taken. With a smile, she asked if he had not learned that everything in the world has a price. She then threatened him, saying the hero of Marin was now a knight without honor. Eugene just listened to her with a cold look, his red eyes glowing intently. Priscilla then challenged him, asking if he was just going to leave after accepting all those expensive gifts. But Eugene seemed to find the entire situation quite amusing. With a slight smile, he said she gave orders and gifts that nobody asked for, and now she demanded payment. With his red eyes gleaming, he wondered how a merchant dared to threaten him. His attitude shocked Priscilla and all her men in the room. Eugene stated he already had a contract and did not care what people said about him. He warned her that everything truly has a price. He told her to go ahead and say whatever she wanted, because then she would learn the real meaning of the word price. He turned the situation around, arguing that her company had harassed the hero who saved the city. Because of that, he claimed, no knight would want to help Marin in the future. Part quickly apologized for Eugene's audacity and said the situation was regrettable. Priscilla regretted her move, knowing she could have had a better relationship with him. One of her men quickly called to her, snapping her out of her deep thoughts, and then asked Eugene to wait a moment before leaving. Priscilla bowed and apologized for being rude and disrespectful. She said her desire for advantage had gone too far and wanted to start over. Furthermore, she guaranteed that the contract with Bill Moore would continue exactly as before. The woman reasoned that most knights only seek fame, but Eugene was different. She realized Eugene was too dangerous to be messed with. That's why her merchant instincts decided she had to change her tactic with him. Eugene then said he could at least hear what she had to say, but he warned that the offer had better be good enough to justify his time. Priscilla thanked him for his mercy and for hearing her out. Back in the forest, Miriam complained that the new armor was ugly and only good for show. Part praised Eugene for securing the contract, and Miriam boasted with pride. Part explained that the trading company operated on a massive scale throughout the empire. The company had hundreds of branches and even dealt with the demonic kingdoms in the region. The offer of unlimited access to dungeons was exceptionally bold. Part praised Eugene's strategy, but Eugene simply said he only did it because he was annoyed. Suddenly, one of the new mercenaries spoke up, saying that flashy armor did not make someone a knight. With a mocking look, he wondered if Eugene even knew how to hold a sword. Miriam got irritated by the comment, but Eugene ignored the provocation. Suddenly, Kammer appeared and said Eugene arrived just in time. He addressed Eugene as Lord Tiwan, and Eugene greeted him in return. Kammer explained that his brother hired new mercenaries for the dungeon. He mentioned that the old group was quite unpleasant and was killed by wolves, and the new mercenaries seemed very similar to the old ones in every way. That is why, for the dungeon subjugation, Kammer wanted Eugene to be the commander. The new mercenary leader interrupted their conversation. With a glare, he asked if he would be the commander who meets his end. The mercenaries were shocked, and Rabin yelled that this was senseless blasphemy. However, their leader said he did not like to talk like that. He said they were not on a picnic, because in a dungeon, human life is worthless, and it is natural to prepare for the worst. With a smile, Eugene stared at the man who stumbled over the word commander. Eugene then agreed, saying that if he died, the bald-headed jerk could take command. Miriam pointed at the man, and Eugene said he already knew everything. He was well aware that this was all a setup by the jealous Bertel. Eugene knew the plan was to use the mercenaries to take him out inside the dungeon. But with a wicked grin, Eugene thought it would be fun to ruin everything. In the dungeon, Miriam used her magic while Eugene prepared for the fight. Without wasting any time, Eugene charged forward and cut down the goblins with his sword. He moved with swift agility, taking out several monsters in his path. With a single blow, he cut down another goblin and continued to advance alone. The blade of his sword went right through a monster's head. The mercenary leader realized his reputation was no exaggeration. Eugene was at the front, killing dozens of enemies by himself without stopping. It was as if Eugene was a giant shield that gave the group a sense of security. The mercenary decided he needed to watch carefully for an opening to attack. With his poisoned blade, all he needed was one scratch on Eugene's face. Eugene told them to be careful, as the mid-level monsters were about to appear. He emphasized once more to the group that only the confident should follow him. The mercenary leader said that if the commander was going forward, they would too, because this was their chance. However, when Part and Rabin got ready to go, the leader told them to wait for now. Surprised, Part said that Eugene seemed to have something else in mind with this plan. Meanwhile, Eugene advanced alone through the cave's darkness. Alone, he remembered that the last time he was there was with the knight Galfredic. An image of his former battle companion appeared in his mind, because he thought that Galfredic was an excellent leader who always fought at the front. With that attitude, he would have cleared the dungeon even with that bunch of weak men. Suddenly, Eugene stopped walking and was lost in thought in the middle of the path. He wondered what the knight would have done in the same situation. Suddenly, the mercenaries finally surrounded him and revealed their true intentions. Eugene smirked and said they had finally dropped their disguise. Miriam appeared, and Eugene said that if they wanted to meet their end, he would grant their wish. Desperate, the men yelled for him to wait and wondered what was happening. The little fairy cast a powerful spell with a very wicked smile. Then, a wave of energy put out the torches, plunging them into the dark. Terrified, the mercenaries wondered how Eugene could use magic, too. In the dark, the leader yelled for them to stay calm and relight the torches. However, amidst the chaos and darkness, two glowing red eyes appeared. In the dark, one of the mercenaries screamed in desperation because he could not see anything. Suddenly, he was attacked, and the leader yelled for everyone to fight back. One of the men then realized they were attacking their own comrades. Amidst the screams of pain, Eugene used his new thread ability. With his eyes glowing red, he controlled the men and the carnage continued. The leader panicked and tried to light a stone to make a fire. He thought that without light, this was the perfect chance to escape alone. However, the man was left completely speechless when he realized what was happening. He could not hear anything and wondered why everything had gone silent. Suddenly, Eugene appeared behind him in the cave's darkness, and with a cold smile, he asked if the mercenary really needed light. Eugene then helped him, saying that human eyes are weak in the dark. The light revealed the bloodbath, and he asked if the man could see better now. He then questioned who the hunter was and who was the prey in this situation. The leader called him a monster as Eugene showed his sharp fangs. Back at the castle, a fierce storm raged through the night. Suddenly, Camer came running in, shouting for Eugene. Eugene calmly waited for him in the castle hallway, his red eyes giving the lord a dead serious look. Camer got closer and asked if the news he heard was true. Bertel showed up too, and Eugene told him to hear it from the source. Just like that, he tossed Maverick, the mercenary leader, onto the floor right in front of them. The brothers were in shock when they saw the mercenary, Maverick, beaten to a pulp. Desperate, the man confessed that he tried to eliminate Eugene in the dungeon. Bertel, with a smirk, claimed the man had finally lost his mind. He yelled at his brother, asking how far Camer was going to take this crazy act. He even accused him of believing the words of a man who was clearly insane. Bertel told the man to stop mumbling and explain things properly. However, Maverick seemed to be under some kind of control, referring to Eugene as his master. He then said he deserved what was coming to him and prepared to jump out the window. Without a second thought, the mercenary threw himself from the top of the castle. Camer screamed his name from the balcony, but it was too late to save him. The man's body fell and ended up skewered on a statue in the courtyard. Bertel claimed Maverick went insane after seeing people killed in the dungeon, but Camer glared at him, saying he found it odd how relieved Bertel seemed by the event. Bertel then got angry and said Eugene was just like him. He even asked if Eugene had any pride as a knight. Eugene then asked if Bertel was truly innocent, swearing on his honor. Scared, Bertel stammered, but insisted he was innocent of all accusations. Eugene then challenged him to a trial by combat. With a cold smile, he said they would bet their honor and the truth as knights. Bertel was left furious and speechless by the unexpected proposal. On the day of the duel, the servants were gossiping about what happened in the castle. They commented that Bertel always caused trouble, but this time he had gone too far. One of the maids asked who the target was, and the other said it was Sir Yan Eugene. And so Bertel faced Eugene in the castle courtyard for the duel. With a serious look, the knight held his sword and prepared for the fight. Camer appeared and announced that they would determine the truth through combat, and that the truth, according to God's will, shall be granted to the victor. With his sword in hand, Eugene readied himself for the final duel. Suddenly, Bertel charged forward and attacked Eugene with a powerful strike. With a yell, he brought his sword down to end the fight once and for all. Eugene faced him with a calm expression, showing no fear. With just one hand, he blocked the attack and shattered Bertel's blade. Bertel then used his remaining sword and prepared to attack Eugene with everything he had. The two then exchanged powerful blows, sparks flying everywhere. Eugene remained silent, staring down his opponent with a cold look. Suddenly, a memory from the past flashed in his mind, and he remembered being hunted. He became angry, recalling how he was chased by that creature for a decade. Bertel was shocked and did not understand what was happening to Eugene. The two continued to fight with an intense exchange of sword strikes. The knight then screamed in pain as he felt the force of Eugene's attack. All of a sudden, Eugene disarmed Bertel, sending his sword flying through the air. He followed up with a powerful kick, sending Bertel crashing to the ground. With a serious look, Eugene told the knight to pick up his sword. Bertel got back up and, with a yell, charged at Eugene. Camer watched the fight and noticed that his brother's swordsmanship was not bad. But to everyone's surprise, it was obvious that Eugene was on a completely different level. Bertel screamed in pain as he was thrown to the ground once again by Eugene. With his eyes glowing, Eugene proved to be far stronger than his opponent. With one last strike, he ended the fight, leaving Bertel collapsed on the ground. Suddenly, Camer intervened, saying, "That's enough and the fight is over." With a serious look, Eugene asked if Camer thought that was really sufficient. Camer then told him to step back because the duel was not over yet. With his brother down, he declared the winner of the duel to be Sir Yan Eugene, but Bertel yelled that he could still fight and that he would eliminate Eugene with his own hands. Camer told him to stop, as the outcome of the fight had already been decided. He also told him to act like a knight and admit his crime in prison. However, Bertel snapped, screaming that he did nothing wrong to Eugene. With his sword in hand, he screamed Eugene's name with pure hatred. He blamed Eugene, saying that if he had not been there, none of this would have happened, and he never would have suffered this humiliation if Eugene had never shown up. Eugene then stared him down, and a blue light glowed in his eyes. Suddenly, Bertel's body stopped moving, and he did not understand why. He wondered why his body would not obey him and what was going on. The knight's armor then began to crumble, and he started to panic. Eugene said he should have taken the last chance his brother gave him. With a final, devastating blow, Eugene finished Bertel once and for all. Part and Rabin remained silent, watching the scene without a word. Eugene then turned and walked toward the exit of the castle courtyard. With a look of sadness, Kammer watched his brother's body lying on the ground. Back in the city, Miriam complained that Eugene wasted his first chance to turn someone into a vampire. Eugene asked what she meant, and she said he used the man and then tossed him aside. But Eugene explained that the man was weak-willed and would not have been able to handle the transformation. He said if he had kept him around, the fact that he had become a vampire would have been discovered. Eugene then said he did not seem like the type to spare those who showed their fangs. Miriam called him cold and said vampires are supposed to have countless slaves. Eugene thought that turning weaklings into vampires was just more work than it was worth. He added that if there were someone he genuinely liked, he might consider turning them. Suddenly, someone shouted that a huge commotion had started with Lord Galfredic. Eugene then showed up at the guild, and Priscilla was surprised to see him. Bill Moore greeted him and said he heard about the successful dungeon subjugation. Without wasting any time, Eugene asked what happened to Lord Galfredic. Priscilla went quiet and looked at him with a very serious expression. She explained that 2 weeks ago, the knight took part in a subjugation, and he disappeared alone in a labyrinth within Count Evero's territory. Eugene then immediately headed to the location to investigate what happened. With a determined look, he prepared to search for his old comrade. Once in the city, Eugene entered a mansion and was greeted by a nobleman. The man introduced himself as Lord Jevin Evero and welcomed Eugene. Eugene greeted him, and the lord invited him in to talk. Jevin Evero, the eldest son of the Evero family, seemed quite friendly. He explained that Galfredic's greed led him to enter the upper levels of the labyrinth alone. Eugene repeated his words with a very suspicious look. Jevin confirmed it, saying that, unfortunately, they had not touched that place in over 100 years. Jevin explained that the master of the labyrinth who ruled the place resided there. Suddenly, another man appeared and said Galfredic caused trouble for everyone. Jevin then introduced him as Sir Lugitz, a knight from his domain. The man greeted Eugene and said he heard about their duel. With a smile, he revealed that the two of them had something interesting in common because he was the winner of the family tournament and had defeated Galfredic as well. Jevin then apologized and said this only showed how valuable the missing knight was. He then asked if Eugene and the knight shared a deep friendship. Eugene confirmed it with a cold look, and Miriam got annoyed with him. Jevin said he would give Eugene his full support for coming all this way for a friend. He explained that if the search went on for more than a month, they would declare Galfredic deceased. He also revealed that 3 weeks had already passed, and there was no hope left. Eugene stared at the Lord with a serious and determined look, and without wasting time, got up to leave for the labyrinth immediately. Jevin then said he would have a subjugation party ready in 3 days, and asked Eugene to rest and recover from his long journey. Eugene thanked him and said there was one more thing he needed. They had hired a mage and would bring her along to help with the search. Back in the city, Miriam complained that the new armor was huge and looked goofy. She also got annoyed with Jevin, saying he had no manners at all. Eugene then thought that there was more than one thing fishy about that story. He remembered that Galfredic was about to receive a title and had no reason to take such a risk. With a smile, the knight had even invited Eugene to come along and make a good impression. Eugene did not understand the change of plans or why he was being tested again. He knew the knight was not the type to risk everything for a moment of greed. Suddenly, a man shouted that the Messiah was coming, getting everyone's attention. He said, "The goddess of victory will descend to destroy the land, as the prophecy says, and the disaster has already begun with animals dropping dead near the labyrinth." Miriam then realized they were talking about Eugene and got confused. The man then yelled for everyone to offer flesh and blood as a sacrifice. He claimed that if they did, the Messiah would descend and save the tainted land. Miriam was annoyed by the scene and Eugene observed that the city felt wrong. A young man then handed Eugene a flyer and told him to believe, because the gods were angry. Eugene read about the dying animals and the crumbling labyrinth. He wondered if it was the work of monsters and why Galfredic went in alone. Without wasting time, he told Miriam they were heading to the labyrinth right now. He then found a mage and told her that 3 days was too long and they would go alone. Suddenly, the mage said she never thought she would see a vampire in a place like this. Eugene was shocked and wondered how she figured out his true identity. With a slight smile, the mage taunted him further, saying he was just walking around in broad daylight. Eugene became angry and grabbed the mage hard by the throat. Meanwhile, the man continued to shout that the Messiah was coming with a cry of pain. The mage felt Eugene's incredible strength. With his red eyes, Eugene asked how she recognized him so quickly, and he threatened her, saying he would snap her neck if she did not answer. The mage stammered that she would talk, but needed him to let her go. With great difficulty, she revealed it was because of Eugene's blood shadow. Miriam then said the name sounded familiar and seemed to remember something. Suddenly, the fairy screamed as she realized where she knew that name from. Desperate, she yelled for Eugene to stop and not to eliminate the mage because she was a mage and part of the Blood Shadow School. She explained that they were a group of mages who had served vampires for generations. With the force of his grip, the mage ended up passing out in his arms. Waking up, she complained that she could not answer if he did not let go. Eugene then apologized and said he was starting to talk like a villain. The mage then formally introduced herself as Ciri Rory of the Shadow School. She revealed that because of the school's nature, they could sense the presence of a vampire. She also revealed she was looking for him at the request of the young master, Jevin. Angrily, Eugene thought he was going to shut Galfredic's mouth when he found him. Serena then revealed she was in the subjugation party when Galfredic vanished. Eugene asked for more details. She explained she needed monster spoils, so she signed up for the subjugation of the Evero Count's labyrinth. Since the place was known for being treacherous, everyone was moving forward with confidence. Suddenly, an earthquake shook the labyrinth and the ground began to tremble. The floor then collapsed and she almost fell, but someone grabbed her at the last second. It was Sir Galfredic, who was guarding the rear of the group at that moment. He saved her but ended up falling into the abyss in her place, into the darkness. After escaping, she heard the others blaming the knight for the earthquake, saying that he opened the gate to the upper levels, causing the whole disaster. Serena said she thought about telling Eugene the truth since he was his friend. Eugene then realized the story was different from what Jevin told him, and he wondered if the Lord lied, or if he got false information from someone. Suddenly, Ciri revealed she saw something strange in that moment of chaos. At the bottom of the abyss where the knight fell, she saw a huge eye drawn there. Eugene was surprised, and she confirmed that it was indeed an eye. She also reminded him of the cultists who were handing out flyers in the square, and that the image on the flyer was the same one she saw at the bottom of the abyss. Meanwhile, in a dark place, the cultists worshipped the image of the giant eye. One of them said that the Messiah who would lead them to salvation would soon awaken. At the entrance of the labyrinth, one of the men reported that the provisions were stocked. Lujitz then asked Eugene how he felt about reuniting with his comrade. Eugene replied that he just hoped he did not have to carry a body back. The knight then said Galfredic was not the type to go down easily. Lujitz even laughed and said Eugene had a lot of faith in his friend. Eugene thought that he had wanted to enter the labyrinth sooner, but he needed to keep an eye on that scumbag Lujitz just in case. He knew the knight had survived for 3 weeks and could last another 3 days. Suddenly, a group of Templars appeared and greeted Eugene. They introduced themselves as Templars from the monastery of House Evero and said it was an honor to serve alongside such a pious knight. Miriam had to hold back her laughter, hearing them call a vampire pious. Lujitz was surprised, as it was rare for Templars to take an interest in a knight, and with a smirk, he wondered if Eugene was some kind of vampire paladin. At the entrance of the labyrinth, Eugene called Part over for a talk. They then set up camp, and Eugene told them not to let their guard down. Miriam was fascinated by the place, saying it was overflowing with mana energy. Part said the place was strange and seemed designed for survival. Eugene thought that if the worst happened, he could hide here to survive. Suddenly, Lujitz appeared and said it was the perfect place for scoundrels to hide. Lujitz praised Eugene, saying his skills were impressive. With a smile, he told Eugene not to be so impatient and that the person he needed to trust most right now was himself. Eugene then said that for a mapped-out place, they were having a lot of casualties. Lujitz laughed and said, "They are merely sacrifices offered to the labyrinth." Suddenly, Eugene's eyes started glowing red, and to everyone's surprise, a strong earthquake shook the entire structure. Lujits yelled for everyone to hold on as the labyrinth structure began changing. With a smirk, Lujits said the place where Galfredik fell was right here. He then revealed that this zone, where the walls constantly shift, was also the shortcut to the upper levels they were looking for. Serena said that this earthquake was the same one as before. Lujits then stopped in one spot, and Eugene asked where the shortcut was with a malicious grin. The knight said the shortcut was right where he was standing. Eugene then realized it was a trap and braced for the worst. Suddenly, enormous gears emerged and changed the entire layout of the place. Eugene held on to avoid falling into the dark abyss of the cavern and realized it was not a natural earthquake. It was all a trap. Serena then called out to him and pointed at something in the middle of the darkness. With his red eyes, Eugene stared at what was coming toward them. To his astonishment, he found Galfredik tied up and severely injured. Without a second thought, Eugene rushed forward to save his friend. He got closer and realized the severity of the knight's injuries. Upon touching his face, Eugene sensed that something was very wrong. With his red eyes, he realized the knight was still alive. Suddenly, Miriam warned him that something felt off about this place. The fairy said she felt a different presence coming from beneath the cavern floor. A strong gust of wind then started blowing from an unknown direction. Everyone wondered where that powerful wind was coming from. From the depths of the abyss, a red light emerged, illuminating the darkness. With its glowing eyes, a giant creature began to rise. The monster revealed itself with an enormous body and purple flames all over. Before them appeared the fearsome Minotaur, the master of this labyrinth. Serena screamed in terror, and Eugene told her to protect the knight. The Minotaur attacked with full force, and Eugene charged into battle. With a leap, he dodged the blow and prepared to attack the creature. With his sword in hand, he readied himself to face the giant monster. Eugene then unleashed all his power, and a red light emanated from his body. Serena screamed in fear upon seeing the raw strength of Eugene's attack. With its giant axe in hand, the Minotaur got ready to attack with everything it had. Eugene braced for the worst. A red light then glowed, and the creature launched a powerful attack. The energy wave destroyed everything and sent Eugene and Galfredik flying. Galfredik was then thrown into the air, and Eugene was shocked by the scene. Without a second thought, he lunged forward to try and save his friend from the fall. He reached out his hand but could not get to him in time to save him. Desperate, Eugene screamed his friend's name as he fell. Suddenly, he was stopped by a spell and did not understand what happened. With his eyes glowing, Eugene wondered what the meaning of this was. Serena then warned him that the monster was a high-level minotaur and that even a vampire would be eliminated if they faced it head-on. With a look of rage, Eugene glared at her, his sharp fangs showing. With her dagger ready, she prepared herself, and the two faced off with serious expressions. Eugene then said she had crossed the line and called her by her name. Serena apologized, saying she could not just watch a vampire jump to his doom, and that attacking a minotaur head-on offered a minimal chance of victory. She added that if he wanted to save the knight, he needed to keep a cool head. The mage wondered if the labyrinth was even big enough to house a minotaur. Eugene stared at a blue light that appeared on the wall. Lujits then said he did not know the mage was capable of using earth magic. He added that she survived thanks to Galfredik and that she was a weirdo. Ciri then glared at Lujits with rage and called out his name with pure hatred. She remembered that it all happened so fast and felt guilty about what occurred. With a look of anger, Eugene realized that Lujits was the one to blame for everything and that he was the one who had turned Galfredik into what he was now. Lujits then said he just brought the friend for the Lord to see how much he loved him. He grabbed Eugene and called him rude for accusing him. Eugene sensed a strange aura and realized something was wrong with his red eyes. He prepared to attack the knight with everything he had. Eugene attacked, and a strange tattoo glowed on Lujits's hand. Ciri then realized that monstrous strength was not really his, and a purple aura emanated from the knight's body as he used an inherited power. She explained that the crest granted inherited power and was a forbidden magic because the magic began to transfer power from non-human beings to humans. Lujits countered that forbidden magic was just wordplay by those who wanted to monopolize power, and that they were the chosen ones to survive when despair came to the world. Eugene then said Lujits stole someone else's power to defeat Galfredik and then bragged as if the skill was his own. With a malicious grin, Eugene said he would first make Lujits realize his place. The two then clashed, and a red aura emanated from Eugene's body. The two energies collided, and a massive explosion rocked the place. Serena was impressed by the power and wondered if a normal vampire could emit that kind of energy. With a smirk, Lujit said he was not the only one who was hiding his power. With a powerful punch, he attacked Eugene with everything he had. Eugene retaliated, and a purple aura emanated from his body during the fight. The knight warned that he had no intention of holding back in this battle. With the force of the blow, Serena was thrown far away, screaming in pain. Lujits then said all the labyrinth traps had now been exposed. With a wicked smile, he told Eugene to fall in silence. Eugene shouted Serena's name and prepared for the worst. The mage then used her magic and created a shield to protect Eugene. Lujits stared down Eugene with a serious and determined look, and with his red eyes, Eugene got ready for the final showdown. The knight then hid behind a wall and watched Eugene. Suddenly, he attacked with his sword, striking Eugene in the face. With a cold gaze, Lujits continued to attack without any mercy. With his sword in hand, he prepared for the final blow against Eugene. The knight thought that he had heard rumors of his strength, but it surpassed his expectations. Smirking, he admitted that using Galfredic as bait was the right choice. With a malicious grin, Lujits said the final sacrifice would be offered. Suddenly, Serena's magic circle shattered, and she screamed in pain. The mage then warned that the magic circle would not work here anymore. Serena then asked where Eugene was going, but he ignored her. The mage felt guilty and wondered why she ever got involved in this. Scared, she wondered what kind of horrible inferno this place was, and even thought she should have pretended not to know and run far away. Suddenly, she saw Eugene holding Galfredic in his arms. Eugene was carrying the knight, who was all beaten up and unconscious. He then asked the mage if she could save his friend's life. Eugene glared at Siri and said that was not an answer to his question. Scared, the mage stayed silent, not knowing what to say to him. She then said she would do her best and used her magic to heal him. Miriam appeared and warned that there was no way out of this place. She said the place seemed like the end of the labyrinth, an isolated boss room. The fairy said that was what she wanted to warn him about earlier because she could not control anything here, even as a water spirit, and that the pool of blood had a different and strange consistency. Eugene stared at the pool with a serious and suspicious look, and wondered if those eyes were what the mage saw at the bottom of the abyss. Eugene then asked why she could not control the pool of blood. Suddenly, a blood monster began to form from the pool on the ground. The creature rose and stared at Eugene with an empty gaze. To everyone's surprise, the Minotaur also regenerated and got back on its feet. Eugene told Miriam to find an opening for them to escape. He faced the giant monster and prepared for the battle to come. Siri continued to heal Galfredic, who was still unconscious. With his red eyes, Eugene decided he needed to immobilize the monster. With his sword in hand, he charged and attacked the creature with everything he had. Eugene used his ability, and a series of red claws appeared. The attack hit the Minotaur dead on, but it did not seem to feel a thing. Eugene continued to attack with all his strength and power. He used his ability again, attacking the monster with claws of blood. Suddenly, his sword broke, and he was shocked by the enemy's resilience. With a serious look, Eugene clutched the broken blade in his hand. The creature prepared to attack, and a yellow light glowed in its mouth. With a swift movement, Eugene dodged the energy blast. With a leap, he closed in on the monster for a close-quarters attack. Eugene landed a powerful punch on the giant creature's face. With another leap, he prepared to attack the Minotaur with all he had. He realized that a normal sword could not even scratch the monster. With his hand glowing red, he decided he would make do with what he had. He created a new blade of blood and prepared for combat. With his new weapon in hand, Eugene faced the creature seriously. He charged and used a blood spear to attack the Minotaur. With a quick move, he dodged an attack and prepared to counter. He continued to fight, exchanging a series of blows with the creature. With his fangs bared, Eugene attacked the monster with everything he had, but the Minotaur hit him with a punch, sending him crashing into the wall. The creature then attacked with its weapon, and the floor shattered from the impact. Eugene was thrown far away and slammed into the cavern wall. With a determined look, he got ready for round 2 of the fight. Siri tried to wake up Galfredic, who remained unconscious on the floor, and asked him to wake up because his friend was in danger and needed help. Eugene realized the mage was right, and that he could not win because the high-level monster was on a completely different level of strength. Suddenly, the creature glared at him with a look of pure evil and got ready. Eugene cursed and braced himself for the monster's final attack. With all his power, he used his ability, and a series of claws emerged. He was caught by the enemy's blow, which riddled him with holes. Siri screamed Eugene's name and prepared for the worst. All battered, Eugene glared at the monster with a look of rage. He then remembered the powerlessness he felt for over a decade. With his blood claws, he attacked the Minotaur with everything he had. But he wondered why he was feeling more pain than before. With a scream of agony, Eugene was slammed onto the cavern floor. Beaten down, he prepared for the giant creature's final blow. Lying on the ground, Eugene watched the scene with an empty gaze and wondered why he was fighting so hard to save his friend, and why it was hurting even more than last time. Galfredic then woke up and saw Eugene down and covered in wounds. With a look of surprise, he stared at Eugene completely bewildered and wondered why he was risking so much to save him. Serena was shocked after the Minotaur incident as she saw Eugene, who was standing just above a pool of blood. She thought to herself that this was exactly why she had warned him. Even if Eugene was a vampire, there was no way he could defeat something as powerful as the Minotaur, the labyrinth's boss. Eugene had been pierced through the stomach by those giant, rock-like structures. Meanwhile, Serena was sitting right in front of Galfredic, knowing there was nowhere to run. She wondered if she was really going to die as the Minotaur started charging a purple fire attack from its mouth. Serena was disappointed in herself and apologized to Eugene, thinking she had not been a good enough disciple. But just then she heard a familiar voice. It was Galfredic, who finally got up despite his critical condition. Serena wondered how this was possible. Galfredic was deeply disappointed in himself because he felt it was his mistake that Eugene had been involved in this. Serena immediately came closer to Galfredic, telling him that after Eugene they were the next targets, so they should run away while they still could. However, Galfredic immediately refused. He realized that Liujits was a son of a gun who had used him as bait to get to Sir Eugene. He realized the brat had been after Eugene from the start, and because Galfredic had gone around saying he was Eugene's friend, he had ended up becoming a burden. Even as Galfredic coughed up blood, he started moving toward Eugene, knowing this was all his fault for being weak. He remembered that their friendship could have ended as quickly as it began, but because of Eugene's inner and physical strength, Galfredic had been impressed and instantly charmed. He did not want to let go of the opportunity to be friends with such a good guy. Galfredic wanted to become someone strong enough to stand by Eugene's side, but now it was all over. Galfredic jumped straight into the attack that was supposed to finish off Eugene. Serena screamed, telling Galfredic to wait and not be so reckless, but the man grabbed Serena and threw her away from the blast radius. He immediately apologized to Eugene for what he was about to do. As he looked at Eugene's face, he hoped that if he were to be reincarnated, he would be reborn as a knight who serves the boy infinitely as a good friend and servant to pay off his debt. While Galfredic was smiling, multiple piercing rocks flew toward him and pierced his body. With that, Galfredic's life finally ended. Eugene witnessed this horror with his own crimson eyes, experiencing the pain of losing his one and only real friend. This was enough to break something inside him. Eugene became enraged as his vampire teeth grew and emerged instantly. A crimson aura surrounded and encircled him completely. It was as if a huge explosion was about to take place. Serena could not believe that Galfredic, an honorable knight, had called a vampire his friend. As this was happening, a transformation took place. Eugene's hands changed and he was clad in black armor as he broke through the rocks that had pierced him. He slowly started to emerge, levitating as if the energy itself was lifting him. He was being healed completely, and his crimson eyes slowly but surely turned black. Even the Minotaur was shocked, unable to penetrate the barrier created by the transformation. In an instant, Eugene flashed through the monster and mercilessly cut off one of its hands, making it incapable of attacking. Eugene landed on the sacrificial altar, revealing his new look in its full glory, a new vampire crown, multiple sharp teeth, and completely crimson eyes. The blood pool started rising toward the sacrificial altar. As the boy looked at his hands, Serena witnessed everything, wondering why Eugene's body was going through such a change. The Minotaur tried to use its other hand to attack, but before it could do so, Eugene's killing intent flared as he jumped toward it. Serena noticed that even the blood puddles in the surroundings were reacting to Sir Eugene, making him completely different from ordinary vampires. Serena let out a nervous, dangerous, but excited laugh as she realized she might have just witnessed something historical, an awakening. As the blood reacted to Eugene, he materialized an energy ball in his hand. Getting ready to defeat the monster in one blow, the energy bubble turned into a blade. Eugene slashed through the air, cutting the Minotaur in half, severely damaging the creature and stunning it momentarily. Suddenly, multiple eyes of the labyrinth started opening. As one of them fully opened, the whole labyrinth started shaking. Serena noticed that the blood level was going down and the area was becoming shallower. The Minotaur screamed in agony, unable to bear the pain from Eugene's attack, but the blood began to heal the monster. Serena was shocked because even though it was a high-ranking creature, it was healing way too fast. It was as if the ox monster was being actively healed through magic. Its critical injuries were repaired right after the eyes opened, and the blood puddles receded. Serena realized the horror as she saw the Minotaur transforming completely. It was as if the monster was now possessed by some other entity, surrounded by a dark aura. She wondered if the labyrinth was using blood as an ingredient to heal the monster. Meanwhile, Eugene also noticed this and broke one of the eyes of the labyrinth. Blood that had been stored inside started pouring out. Serena saw how frantically the Minotaur started protecting the eye, while Eugene dodged every attack and pierced another. As the eyes were destroyed, the monster felt the pain. It was as if the labyrinth and the monster were connected. Eugene realized that the owner of the labyrinth was not the Minotaur. The hundreds of people who had gone missing and the labyrinth environment itself were designed for the long-term survival of humans so they could be eaten by the labyrinth. The entire labyrinth was the god that the cultists worshipped, and they were sacrificing everyone for it. In the center was a core with multiple eyes. Multiple worshippers of the cult began praying, believing that since their god had awakened, everyone who was filthy would be eradicated. They called out for a messiah to emerge while the vampire continued to fight the monster. Suddenly, a gate opened, and Liujits witnessed everything, telling his dear god to become even more wrathful and run wild with rage. He believed it was time for the god to listen to his prayers. Meanwhile, at the sacrificial altar, Serena noticed that all the blood puddles had been absorbed by the core of the labyrinth. It was activated with a glowing purple energy. The core transformed into a weird-looking monster with a giant eye, emitting demonic energy and dark power. Suddenly, the Minotaur grew wings and started flying in front of Serena. It then crashed through the ceiling and escaped. A high-ranking monster escaping a dungeon was an impossible thing that Serena had never heard of happening. She worried about what she should do, knowing there was a town nearby with innocent people. The water spirit came flying in, happily telling Eugene that she had found an exit. But then she looked up and realized the exit had already been made by the monster. As the place started collapsing, the spirit teleported in front of Eugene, telling him they had to get out of there. But she saw that the boy was enraged. His crown started disappearing as he looked at his good friend, now lifeless but still wearing a smile. The fairy wondered what Eugene was going to do. Eugene was grieving deeply, and even Serena was surprised to see a vampire grieving for a human. Eugene looked into the eyes of the man he considered a true friend. Serena realized that Eugene was someone of noble blood who had hidden his identity. Finally, we see that Eugene was actually going to inject his blood into Galfredick through his sharp teeth, trying to save him. As the scene shifts, we see that it was a crimson moon in the environment, and the Minotaur flew out of the dungeon with insane flashing speeds as he was still possessed. And having flames all around his body, the Minotaur landed onto a cliff and saw the human town nearby as it started screaming with the core also possessing him, signifying the control as it burned all around the edges. The crimson moon was clearly visible to everyone, while the humans were scattered around the place, doing their usual things, unaware of what was going to happen to them. Then we go to a flashback where we see Eugene standing while Serena wondered if the boy had ever heard of the Origin vampires. Because Origins are the highest ranked and most noble vampires, and even when Serena did not know when he first met her. But now she sees it because Eugene possesses the blood of an Origin vampire. And it had one crucial feature because an Origin can resurrect someone who recently died to make them their subordinate. This even showed Eugene as he wondered if this was even possible, and Serena was sure that Eugene will know what to do and how to do it. Of course, Eugene knew it. And inside his head was the method that he bit the neck of his target and then gave them his own blood. But if he does that, things don't always turn good because he had done it before. But the puppet's mind could not handle it, and most humans were like that, and even Serena knew it. However, she thought that it might be different for Galfredick, because she had heard from her masters that if a person with good mental fortitude takes in an Origin's blood, then they keep their sanity as well as their abilities from when they were human, believing that it was worth a try. But still, Serena noted a problem that Galfredick was an honorable knight, so he might consider everything an insult to be given a second life as a vampire, which would go against his honor. And if that happens, then Galfredick might end up attacking them instead. Serena wondered about what Eugene thought about this proposition, and even the boy knew that he had never told his friend who he was or what his origins were. And there's no way for him to know about how Galfredick feels about vampires. However, he remembered everything and every instance of the friendship they have shared together, and he was sure that this was something pure, and it deserved a second chance even when Eugene did not tell anything to Serena. He knew that there was no other way than to just ask Galfredick after he was resurrected, and as the boy bit his friend, we come back to the present where we see that after the bite happened, Something changed inside Eugene as he noticed that instead of him having to take efforts to inject his blood, Galfredik was sucking the blood of the vampire like crazy, and it was going in too quickly, and he cannot even take his teeth out. He was commencing the inheritance ritual. But it was affecting Eugene too, as the subject was turning into the Lord's possession under the ritual of blood. The subject's soul will belong to the Lord, and all of the subject's power shall also belong to the Lord, which was called inheritance. And we see that Galfredik's whole body was rejuvenated with new blood. It was the same thing that was happening while Eugene transformed into a new vampire form, and Serena was witnessing the whole thing all over again. While we see that Galfredik was now having an explosion-like feel with multiple crimson beams shooting through him, and the explosion was so insane that it made a red beam that fired through the sky, shining the whole area like crazy. But on the other hand, the scene shifts to the nearby human town, which was now burning as humans ran away telling each other to get away from the place. Every human thought that the labyrinth had broken down, knowing that now rumors were everywhere and were wreaking havoc. Multiple snake-type rumors along with other insects were now preying upon humans, grabbing them mercilessly, and destroying multiple families without any eminent cause. Meanwhile, even the possessed Minotaur was wreaking havoc while a human was running away, but he was too small to escape, and his death was imminent. And all these things and the mayhem caused by the monsters were looked upon by one man who was happy that finally the monsters were there. He was none other than Liujits, who was happy that the moment he received his reward for the sacrifices he have offered to the labyrinth has come. And he was happy even more because the humans who were present there will think of him as an honorable knight, and will never know that the labyrinth and the brat planned all of this together. Humans were screaming in pain and agony, and the others were dead scared of what was going to happen to them, while Liujits thought that once the village's despair level is at an all-time high because of the Minotaur's attack, Liujits will appear and take the Minotaur down, and that will be his reward for having given up all those offerings to the labyrinth until now, and by using the human nature to seek salvation, the deeper the despair one is in. He was planning to become a messiah who saves everyone in the end, so he wanted everyone to die and experience despair more so that he can become a god who saves them all. And then worshipped as a messiah through ages, the scene shifts back, and we see multiple flying-type rumors and ancient monsters attacking humans. And one family who was running away was stopped as the female turned around, looking at her child who got knocked down by a rock at the wrong time, and a wolf-type rumor was going to attack them and eat them as a whole. But then suddenly, as the wolf monster jumped onto them, a streak of light like a flash went through the wolf monster several meters away. And on the face of it was actually our boy who was visible for mere seconds. And then got away insanely fast. Eugene grabbed the mouth of the wolf monster, crushing all the teeth without any efforts. And we see that now Eugene was targeting the other parts to finish the wolf immediately. The mother was shocked, while the boy was happy to be saved as he saw his new hero, who they don't know is actually a vampire now. Eugene was posing like a literal hero, as his new look was revealed with an insanely cool-looking armor and overall cool-looking shot, which was not so cool for Liujits, who wondered about how Eugene was able to survive, and what he was doing outside the labyrinth, thinking that the Minotaur must have absorbed his blood and became stronger. But now Eugene was right in front of him, and he wondered about how this was possible because he had offered him as the last sacrifice. So he was sure that Eugene was dead. Now Liujits' mind was going crazy as he wondered about how the boy is alive, and here right now wondering if he suddenly became stronger on the brink of death, or something else, knowing that if that is true, then he wondered if Eugene was even human to begin with, but then was interrupted by our boy, who turned towards the brat. Wondering if Javin even knows about the fact that Liujits was the one who caused all this mess to begin with, and even when the brat was shocked, the boy was smiling, telling him that it does not matter now, because he is going to pay the price for his sins right there. And just as Eugene said so, someone else with crimson eyes appeared right behind the brat ready to sever his head. Somehow, Liujits reacted at the exact time and dodged the place as the whole building collapsed due to the impact of the attack, and somehow Liujits was even more crazy, laughing like a maniac. And as the dust cleared, we see the familiar face, as the man behind the dust wondered if Liujits has missed him. And we see that it was the new and all-powerful Galfredik who told Liujits that it is time for him to get back at the brat. For humiliating him in the tournament, telling the brat to make sure that he's ready to pay the price of having tricked him over in the past, opening his eyes, which was now a vampire's, as the cool man called out the brat as the heretic Liujits. The scene shifts again, and we see a huge monster clashing with Eugene, while all the other humans run away, knowing that the monster is not targeting them. Eugene fights the Minotaur-like monster at insane speeds, fully aware that he must stop it from harming innocent civilians. At this moment, the vampire does not care about anything else except fighting. Using his sharp claws, he slashes into the monster's tough hide as if it were butter, even damaging the eye that had possessed the creature. As the monster screams in pain and agony, the humans finally realize that someone is fighting that behemoth. Seeing a knight clad in dark armor with glowing red eyes, everyone realizes that this is none other than Sir Eugene, who has come to protect their village. The humans rejoice, believing they have been saved by their savior as the knight fights for them. Someone among the crowd declares that they are wrong. Sir Eugene is not just a knight, but their true messiah, sent by the heavens for humanity's salvation. As Eugene continues fighting the monster, many humans begin to believe that the rumored prophecy is real, and that the descent of a messiah is taking place. The scene shifts back to the battle. Eugene does not miss a single strike, repeatedly targeting the Eye of Possession controlling the monster, knowing it is the creature's weakness. He immediately extends his vampire claws and pierces the giant eye. Blood splatters everywhere as the possession slowly fades, and the monster begins losing its strength. Eugene stands calmly, maintaining his balance so he does not fall. When the monster is finally defeated, the humans erupt into cheers. Eugene strikes a cool pose once again. The scene shifts to the cultists. The flames in the brat's hands begin to burn out, and the cultists cannot believe that their god has finally fallen, despite its overwhelming power. Their leader, Lugitz, screams in pain and agony as his power level rapidly decreases. The cultists panic, believing that a great disaster is about to occur. Lugitz refuses to give up. He shouts repeatedly that he has inherited the god's power and that he will become the god of the new era. However, standing before him is Sir Galfredick, and the brat is completely helpless before such an overwhelming presence. Despite his arrogant words, Galfredick effortlessly catches the sword Lugitz swings at him and snaps it in half, staring at him mockingly. He questions what happened to the heretic's borrowed monstrous strength, taunting him that now that their god is gone, no one will lend him power anymore. Lugitz wonders if Galfredick has always been this strong, believing that Galfredick's power has remained the same. At that moment, Eugene returns after defeating the giant eye monster. Galfredick turns to him and asks for his orders. Instead of asking for fresh blood, Eugene calmly tells him to kill every single one of them without mercy. Guys, we are so close to 100,000 subscribers, and I know you all are awesome. And you all can do it in no time, so please hit the subscribe button right now. And now enjoy the story further. Lugitz realizes that there is no escape. As Galfredick charges toward him, he tries to run, still delusional, believing that this cannot be happening. No matter how far he runs, Galfredick's newfound strength allows him to catch up easily. Galfredick stops in front of him, striking a relaxed pose, and asks mockingly where the heretic is rushing to. Addressing him as Sir Lugitz, he reminds him that he must pay the price for betraying Galfredick when he once trusted him. Even until the very end, Lugitz remains delusional, believing that he is not the monster, and that neither Galfredick nor Eugene are human. But before he can finish declaring them as monsters, his fate is sealed. The surroundings burn from the chaos of the battle. When the nightmare finally ends, word of what happened spreads throughout the Evergreen State. Eugene is hailed as a hero for saving the people, alongside Galfredick. Wherever they go, people throw flower petals at them. However, none of this matters to the vampire. The only thing that truly matters to Eugene is that Galfredick is alive once again. That alone makes everything worthwhile, because he came to this place to save his friend, and that is enough for him. As the sun sets, the scene fades. The scene shifts to the next day. Galfredick is visibly annoyed as something keeps splashing all over his face. We soon realize that it is the water spirit Marion, who is screaming non-stop about how worried she was that Galfredick had almost been turned into barbecue by the giant orcs. Meanwhile, Galfredick wonders what this puny thing is and why it is crying so loudly. Eugene looks amused and wonders if Galfredick can finally see it now. He explains that this creature follows him around everywhere. Marion is shocked by such a short introduction and immediately scolds Eugene, telling him that he is really mean. She clarifies that she is not it, and that her name is Marion, a great water spirit. Suddenly, Serena begins to notice something as well, and little by little, Marion becomes visible to her too. The water spirit does not care at all and proudly announces that she is Eugene's first contractor, and since the other two came later, that makes them her juniors. Before she can finish her sentence, Eugene grabs Marion and interrupts her, saying that even though she is annoying and talks too much, she still has some uses, about 1% or so. He also adds that the fact humans usually cannot see her is actually a plus. Galfridic and Serena had been hanging around Eugene for quite some time now, so it made sense that they could finally perceive the water spirit, especially since Serena is a servant of vampires and Galfridic has now become Eugene's subordinate as well. Eugene then explains that Galfridic will need to drink animal blood from now on. Even Eugene himself needs to drink monster blood about twice a month, although it depends on individual power. He is not sure how much Galfridic will need. Galfridic looks down at himself, noticing how his body feels different. He wonders if living a vampire's life means he now has to avoid sunlight. Marion immediately screams that this is a stupid question, saying that Galfridic is already a vampire, and... Before she can finish, Galfridic suddenly gets up and marches straight toward the sunlight, deciding to test it himself without any hesitation. Both Serena and Marion are shocked. Marion thinks Galfridic is an idiot because even Eugene had worked extremely hard to avoid sunlight. Eugene himself is stunned, not by what Galfridic is doing, but by the result. Galfridic is perfectly fine. Eugene cannot believe it and wonders how this is possible. Serena, however, remains calm and explains that Eugene is an origin vampire. Only normal vampires are burned by sunlight. Origin vampires are noble and supreme beings, and sunlight does not affect them at all. Because Galfridic is now an origin vampire subordinate, it makes sense that he is unaffected as well. Eugene decides to test it himself. He steps into the sunlight, watching as his black scales slowly disappear. He realizes he is completely fine. The sunlight does not harm him at all. Now Eugene feels completely useless, wondering why he worked so hard to avoid sunlight all this time when it never affected him in the first place. Galfridic places his hands on Eugene's shoulders and laughs, reminding him that Eugene once mentioned something about being part elf or something similar. Now that Galfridic understands the truth, he finds it hilarious. That also explains why Eugene always wore a hat during the day and rejected Galfridic's dual requests in the mornings. Eugene tries to explain that he was only doing what he thought was best. But now that Galfridic knows Eugene no longer has a reason to refuse, he challenges him to a duel once again. However, when Galfridic tries to call Eugene by name, he finds that he cannot say it. Serena then explains that a subordinate cannot speak the name of the vampire whose blood they received. From now on, Galfridic must address Eugene as master. Galfridic is confused and annoyed, calling it nonsense. They are friends, and friends should be able to call each other by name. But Serena calmly explains that this is a cardinal rule and there is no way around it. As Eugene watched Serena and Galfridic bickering, he was reminded of a flashback. He remembered the moment when he had explained to Galfridic that he was no longer human and that this was the only option to save his life. Eugene had done everything he could to save Galfridic, but from now on, there would be many restraints and dangers surrounding Galfridic's life. In fact, Eugene had even thought that it might have been better if the man had remained dead. Even so, if Galfridic felt that Eugene had betrayed him, he could still choose not to follow the vampire. After all, it was Eugene alone who had decided to resurrect Galfridic without obtaining his consent. But as Eugene finished speaking, Galfridic's voice steadied. He told Eugene that it was upsetting to hear such things because Eugene was his friend. He said that he did not care whether Eugene was human or not. What mattered was that Galfridic liked Eugene and that Eugene had saved him. With a smile, Galfridic asked if Eugene really thought he was an idiot, someone who would forget the favor of his savior. He added that even if he had to become Eugene's subordinate, that was completely fine, because it meant he could stay by Eugene's side forever, without fail. The memory faded, and the scene returned to the present. Galfridic was still complaining loudly about how he could not even call his friend by name anymore. Serena wondered why Galfridic kept getting stuck on the same issue, even though she had no authority over the cardinal rules herself. Eugene simply smiled. He jokingly wondered if he should sew Galfridic's mouth shut so that he would talk a little less. Suddenly, Galfridic remembered something. He asked Eugene about what he had done with the blonde man and the black-haired man. Hearing this, Eugene replied that he had already ordered them to carry out something quietly without drawing attention. Now, Eugene was wondering whether they had managed to pull it off successfully, without his direct involvement. As the scene shifts, we see that a letter of thanks has been sent to Lord Eugene from the monastery. Lord Jevon explains that, thanks to Lord Eugene, they were able to root out a heretical faction within the monastery. The The Templars had been illegally using half-demon magic stones to raid labyrinths, and in the process, expand their heretical group. Eugene had realized this and dispatched mercenaries to arrest them. During this, Eugene explained that, as far as he knew, Templars were people who acted according to the will of the gods. So the fact that they had volunteered for labor and subjugation was highly suspicious, especially when unsettling rumors about the end times were spreading throughout the territory. Eugene wondered what divine will could have driven them to join a subjugation force. Hearing this, Jevin was shocked, which was quite evident on his face. However, he soon calmed down and sat on a cozy-looking couch. Jevin told Eugene that the Lagrange Monastery was sponsored by the Evergrow family and had been operated quite devotedly. But if the blasphemous faction had gone unnoticed until the end, then the reputation of the Evergrow family could have been severely damaged. On behalf of the Evergrow family, Jevin extended his gratitude to Eugene, explaining that the respect people held for him within the territory was reaching the skis. He urged Eugene to accept their praise and welcome it. Hearing this, Eugene reacted neutrally, telling Jevin that he was glad he could help and deciding that they should be on their way. Jevin remained seated, and in a serious tone, he congratulated Eugene on Sir Galfredic's safe return, saying that he was truly relieved Eugene's close friend had come back unharmed. However, even as Jevin smiled from a distance, a closer look revealed how serious and devastated he truly was. As the scene shifts, we arrive at a bar where many people were drinking and congratulating Galfredic on his safe return. They had already heard the grim rumors surrounding his survival, and many believed that Galfredic would never come back. The man thanked everyone who had believed in him, saying that it was because of them that he had made it back alive. He added that returning with his limbs intact was largely thanks to the help of his master. The other mercenaries could hardly believe that Galfredic would now call Eugene his master every time. As Eugene sat at the same table celebrating, many people expressed their desire to work under him as well, wishing to serve Eugene as their master. Eugene immediately refused, even though it felt a bit cruel. Sir Galfredic Ecker drank as much beer as he could, but soon realized that it started tasting unpleasant. He understood then that he truly had developed a vampire's tongue. Suddenly, Laban noticed that Galfredic's eye color was different from before and asked if something had happened inside the labyrinth. Realizing how perceptive Laban was, Galfredic smiled and grabbed him by the neck, praising him for following Partak this time and looting the monastery neatly. He wondered aloud if Partak had exaggerated his own contribution a bit. Everyone burst into laughter upon hearing this. Laban told everyone that he was a proper mercenary now and that no one should look down on him. This only caused even more laughter. Partak then said that Eugene uncovering the truth behind the monastery was truly astounding, nodding that when the report came in, even Jevin had looked visibly shocked. Hearing this, Eugene himself became curious about what exactly had surprised Lord Jevin. He wondered whether the monastery had sent the letter out of pure gratitude or if Lugitz had simply been used as a scapegoat. Eugene then explained that he had allowed things to play out in a way where only Lugitz was targeted. He had also ordered everyone to loot only the Templars and never to loot the abbot. This had been a carefully thought-out plan. If they had looted the entire monastery and tarnished the Evergrow family's honor, the family would have focused on Eugene's interference. But by leaving a small opening from the family's perspective, all they needed to do was cut off one man, Lugitz. And if that happened, the only person who would move was Lord Jevin himself. Eugene told Partak that they needed to leave Evergrow territory that very night and do so quietly, because things were about to become chaotic. As the scene shifts, we see someone riding a magnificent black horse, wearing a majestic cloak, moving through the forest. Other figures were chasing the group. There, Laban warned everyone that they were surrounded and asked what they should do. Meanwhile, one of the pursuers spotted a man riding a black horse, wrapped in a black leather robe, and thought it perfectly matched Eugene's description. He knew that although Sir Lugitz was a criminal, he had still been a territory knight whom Lord Jevin cherished deeply. Because Lugitz was killed by Galfredic, Lord Jevin was unable to personally pass judgment, and he mourned the matter greatly. Because of this, the incident went beyond merely offending Lord Jevin. It was equivalent to staining his honor. Taking responsibility for this, the pursuer thought that he would definitely scar Eugene's pretty face. However, to his shock, when the cloaked rider turned around, it was none other than Partak. The knight who had pursued him was instantly cornered. At that moment, Eugene appeared behind the knight at an insane speed and slashed off his head cleanly, sending it rolling onto the ground without much effort. Eugene then told everyone to stop right there, and everything froze instantly, shocking the pursuers who had been chasing them. Because of the sudden commotion, the covering cloth of the carriage flew away, revealing that it was not filled with goods, but instead packed with all the mercenaries Eugene had at his disposal. The pursuers panicked and tried to regroup to the rear, but this failed as well. Another caravan appeared from behind, led by Galfredick, who arrived with a cool new look and pose. Smiling confidently, he told them to try escaping if they could. Riding his horse, Galfredick stunned everyone with his striking appearance and declared that they were the ones who were now surrounded. Partak captured all the knights who had come to slay Eugene, while Eugene stood calmly before them. Galfredick dismounted and told his master that it was an excellent tactic, praising how his sportsmanship had become cleaner. It was as if Galfredick had always believed that saber swordsmanship was best suited for mounted combat, and he wondered when Eugene had learned such a skill. Eugene turned around and replied that he had learned everything from Galfredick himself. Rather than being shocked, Galfredick took it as a compliment, blushed slightly, and wondered when he had ever taught Eugene something like that. It was then revealed that the moment Eugene's blood was injected into Galfredick's body, all the skills and experience Galfredick had accumulated over the years were transmitted into Eugene's mind. At the same time, Eugene heard a voice whispering in his ear, telling him that kin belonged to their lord. Eugene wondered whether it was a hallucination or some divine interference meant to help him survive. His thoughts were interrupted when one of the captured knights accused Sir Galfredick of being shameless for laughing after insulting Lord Jevon. The knight claimed Galfredick had not even appreciated the favor of being recommended as a territory knight, and had nearly died in the dungeon due to his own lack of skill. Now, instead of accepting responsibility, he was shifting the blame onto Sir Lugitz, who could no longer defend himself. Hearing this, Eugene grew visibly irritated and considered intervening. However, Galfredick ignored the accusations entirely, simply observing the knights calmly. Eugene finally lost his patience and drew his sword, declaring that a knight should always be prepared to die. He announced that he would let one of them live to tell the tale, while the rest would be executed. Before he could act, Galfredick stopped him and suggested that they treat the captives as prisoners instead. Eugene paused and sheathed his sword, questioning Galfredick's reasoning. Galfredick explained that even among enemies, honoring the courage of those who fought bravely was an old custom. More importantly, if they demanded ransom from the Evergrow family, it would bring in money, which was the most important reason of all. Eugene remained unconvinced, wondering whether leaving their limbs intact would cause trouble later. Galfredick was confused by the question until Eugene picked up a wooden club and nodded, deciding it was sufficient as long as he avoided their joints so they could still work and move freely. Soon, the forest was filled with the screams of the pursuers as they realized their mistake and begged for forgiveness. When the scene shifts, we see the same knights now missing a few teeth and suffering from muscle swelling. Despite this, their eyes were filled with relief, believing that they would be treated well in such a wealthy place, especially since it was the first time they had ever received such generous treatment as prisoners. As the knights were taken away, Priscilla appeared with a smile and told Eugene that they could cover the lodging costs for this level. Now Eugene and Priscilla stepped out of the building as Eugene told her that they would soon be receiving the ransom for the knights from Lord Jevon. Priscilla was shocked, wondering if Lord Jevon was the eldest son of the Evergrow family. However, Eugene did not care and told her that since they were territory knights, their ransom price should be fairly high. Eugene then handed his armor to Priscilla, asking her to repair it. He explained that even though they claimed a dragon's tooth could not pierce it, the armor had still been punctured easily by a single skewer. Priscilla assured him that she would reinforce it and make it much sturdier. Eugene also mentioned that he wanted a new set of armor for Galfredick as well. Hearing this, Galfredick was visibly excited and asked if it was truly meant for him. Eugene replied that since Galfredick was his man now, he should at least maintain the same level of dignity alongside him. Galfredick was deeply pleased, feeling that this was exactly what he expected from his master, and he was glad that he had chosen to follow Eugene. On the other hand, Priscilla was also happy, thinking that she truly had a good eye for people, since Eugene had managed to recruit the famous Galfredick of all people. Considering that Eugene brought in plenty of valuable byproducts every time, a few suits of armor were nothing to her. There was no reason for her to skimp on customer benefits, especially since she was confident that with skills like Eugene, he might one day achieve the impossible. Priscilla then turned around and asked Eugene if he had decided on his next destination. Eugene explained that for the time being, he planned to focus on clearing the advanced zones of the tunnels. However, Priscilla reminded him that greater dreams always require more money. She mentioned a certain gambling opportunity she knew of and asked if Eugene would be willing to take it on.